Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So this is my follow-up that I promised in my last video. So in this video I'm just going to go over the new Battletome for the Cities of Sigmar in a lot more detail, just going over the general rules and also the War Scrolls. As of this moment, probably a lot of you have already seen it, considering it leaked quite a bit already, but I might as well go over it a little bit myself and just give my 2 cents. So yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot to go over here. So to describe the book before I begin, I would probably say, like I mentioned before, the book feels a lot both smaller and bigger in different ways. Like it definitely feels smaller in terms of like overall War Scroll selection and. It's the book's ability to like integrate certain other units into the book. But on the other hand, I feel that it also got a lot bigger in terms of internal complexity, even if it lost some complexity in terms of list building. Also, I feel like the book also definitely has a more what's the word? Unique feel now. Well, not so much unique feel, but more along the lines of it has its own specific characteristics now. Like it feels like the army as a whole has become a much more castling shooting army, where before it felt definitely more like an everything under the sun on army, and basically like there was no real one thing that really like defined a Cities of Sigmar army. No matter what you were doing, it was basically just, you know, whatever you really wanted to do, it was in there, which in and of itself could be considered maybe like a defining trait, but not to the extent it is right now. But enough of that. Let's begin. So, in terms of battle traits, well, one big thing that this book actually does have is the new order system. Now, the battle traits in this book, apparently, the Cities of Sigmar seem to have lost certain battle traits, but one notable one being that was it. Well, I guess that whole like errata battle trait, for example, they had like special use of like endless spells. That's gone. That seems to be gone now. Most of pretty much everything in regards to what they had before, it's now been replaced by the order system. Now, the order system, with how it's constructed, it's if you're familiar with 40K, it's kind of like the order system for the Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum. See, this right here is basically why you got a lot of people saying that they're the Imperial Guard of Age of Sigmar now, because their unique thing that basically sets them apart from like every other army now is not so much everything they can include, but how you can order different units. So basically how it works is that at the start of the battle round, for each character you have on the hero you have on the table, you can issue them one order. But you cannot issue more, like 3 or more of the same order per battle round, if I'm reading this correctly. Yeah, for one on the page, but no more than 3. Yeah, at the same time. So essentially, what these do is that once you assign them face down, and then essentially once it's your time to activate them, you can essentially use them as like an additional command ability. And there's 3 different kinds. Technically, there's 4. So there's universal command abilities that you can assign to any type of unit in the hero in the army. There's ones that specifically are only assignable to human heroes. There's some that are only assigned to Duradin heroes, and there's some that's only assigned to elf heroes. And this is a big thing too, because you can't assign a human order to an elf hero. So there's definitely a lot. So you can't really mix and match outside of the universal ones. And basically how it works is once you assign them order, you put it face down, and when it's your time to activate it, you flip those orders up, and that hero can then assign that order to the proper type of unit. So a human hero, once you flip up a command, you can assign it to a human unit. And then and in addition, this is also even brought up in the designer's notes. This is in addition to any other command abilities you can use them on. So that's actually really cool, because that means this is where a new form of rule stacking comes in. So basically, if you had like a free guild marshal, you could, you know, assign him an order, and then he can give it to, let's say, a unit of steel helms, that order, and then in addition to that, in addition to the effects of that order, they can also be given, let's say, the all-out defense command ability. So that's really kind of cool. So yeah, that's pretty much. So let's get into more detail of what exactly they are. You know what? Before we do that, I think it might be a good idea to address the elephant in the room here. And yes, it looks like Coalition is gone. Not seeing Coalition anywhere. If GW wants to be really, really nice about things, maybe they could give like an errata or something that gives it back. But yeah, there doesn't appear to be any Coalition rules in the book for the book as a whole or any individual city. So it looks like the era of, you know, Coalition Stormcast and Coalition Lumineth Realm Lords, that's all gone now. Now, this is definitely, as I mentioned in my last video, this is definitely going to be a very broken base topic, because on the one hand, I think a lot of people probably would have liked not having to worry about all those, you know, those unintentionally insane combos Coalition did, you know, like the whole thing with, like, you know, like Fulminator charges and, you know, with Sylvaneth cover in the back, you know, those are kind of gone now, and a lot of people probably will not miss that. But who will miss that, however, is the person that was pretty much their whole army. Like, again, this change is really going to affect a lot of Cities players, because essentially means a lot of armies are just essentially not usable anymore. Being devil's advocate, I do understand why they did this, because for the first time in pretty much the book's inception, there is a mass amount of new units that are becoming available, and GW, being, you know, the corporation that it is at the end of the day, they really want to encourage you to buy said models in addition to buying said models that only come in this book. And quite frankly, that was probably not going to happen as much when, you know, you had those players who were just filling out their ranks with Stormcast Eternals and units that weren't in the book at all. So on the one hand, it's definitely sour grapes, definitely for people who will have their armies drastically altered because of this. On the other hand, from a strictly corporate perspective, I get why they did it. Now there is some ways to still make other units from other books work in this book, and there are certain rules, but basically what this is going to do is that you're now stuck to strictly allies. So once again, it's pretty much still it's still roughly keeping you to like one unit in 4 can be like other books, but now what's really stopping that is the cost. See, before you could include like really expensive models, because Coalition was just 1/4 of models, not points. Now you have a points limit, and for example, in a 2,000 point game, I think it's only like 400 points. This is really gonna handicap you in a lot of ways, because now there's a whole bunch of units you can't even bring anymore. So yeah, quite frankly, I don't know if in the end, I don't know if they did the right thing or the wrong thing. I do know that this is really, it's going to upset and delight different people. Okay, so all right, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes here. So these are some of the orders we've been also dying to see. So one thing to note on these, however, is that they essentially like I mentioned before, there are 4 different varieties of orders. There are the universal orders you see at the top. There are the 3 human orders, and then there's 2 elf and Jordan orders. So essentially, these are essentially the add-ons on top of everything else that you're going to see in this book here. So, and now to start off with, we start off with 2 universal orders. So these are the ones that essentially they can be assigned to any race of hero, and they can be given to any race of Cities of Sigmar unit. So overall, there definitely has been a lot of, I guess you could say, grumbling about how people have pointed out there's been a lot more siloing of how abilities only affect certain other things, like only human heroes affect human units. Well, this is one area of the book where there's definitely some overlap, because these can be assigned to anything from any type of hero. Personally, I kind of wish there were more of these, because I just feel anything that has, like, you know, universal overlap would definitely be used more. So I kind of feel maybe these should have been used a bit more. But I guess you make do with what we have. And perfectly honest, out of seeing all the other basically all the other orders, I kind of feel we probably will end up using these ones more than the others too, because I don't know, I just feel like anything that has universal use will probably end up seeing more play, especially if their abilities are not bad. And you know, they seem to be pretty good too. So we have like extra 3 inches of movement along with other abilities from one, and from the other we have, like, you know, counter charge abilities. You know, that's honestly not bad in and of itself. Like, I honestly think we'll end up seeing them more. As for the human ones, they're pretty good. They're pretty good too. Now, for the human ones, I'm definitely seeing, definitely pushing definitely a more like offensive mindset with them. Like, you'll see with the others what I mean, but I think these orders definitely push more the idea of offensive rather than defensive buffs. So in that regard, I think that's good, because, you know, like, I feel like I don't want, as I've mentioned before in others, I don't want too much. If you're going to be creating a lot more siloing of abilities that only affect certain races, you got to make sure that they're unique enough that they don't overlap too much with anything else. So, you know, I don't want, like, every single thing to be a tanker, you know, like, you know, that's, in a lot of ways, that's the Duradin's job, but we'll get to those in a minute. So one is definitely a return fire if you get shot at, so that's always going to be good, and there's definitely some good shooting in this book, so that's a good one to have. Now the next, suppressing fire, I'm not too sure about. I don't know. I just feel the strike last effect is always good, but I kind of feel like, again, it's one of those ones where I feel like you have to jump through too many hoops for it, you know. And you know, and there's gonna be some units, like, for example, with just, you know, like, high bravery, where you might never get this off anyway. Like, I'm not a big fan of those, because I feel like it just affects some units more than others. And as for the last one, well, it's basically just +1 attack on the charge. You can read them right here and see what they do. I've got, honestly, not too many complaints about that one. But again, I wonder how much we'll actually use these in regards when I feel like a lot of people might just want to, will definitely want to spam, like, the +3 movement one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I definitely can see some use for extra attacks and suppressing fire. So, no, sorry, not suppressing fire, but return fire. So yeah, the human ones, yeah, solid B+, A- kind of thing, in my opinion. Now, looking at the Duradin and the Elf orders, I definitely think now we're starting to see, like, the kind of, like, theme of the 3 races. So, as I said before, with the human orders, the definite idea is offense. Like, they want to go out and punch things, shoot things, and return fire on things. But reading through the Duradin orders and the Elf orders, the Duradin definitely are leaning more towards defense. And I believe the elves are leaning definitely more towards speed and hitting fast. So, you know, because the Duradin one is definitely around about tanking hits. You know, you basically got one where, yeah, you can you just giving your units a ward save. That is always good. Like, once we get into, like, some of the Duradin like dispossessed stats, you can definitely see that has some real use. Also, the whole, and also the Grim Last Stand. Let's be honest, right here, this order, I don't know if it has the same overall utility as the shield wall, but hey, you know, if you're doing a desperate last stand on a tanker unit, that's always fun to have. So that's good. That could be good too. Again, keeping to the theme of just, you know, big shield wall of dwarves just getting pummeled and, you know, just dishing it back out. So, and the elf ones, yeah, generally speaking, they're on average they're generally, like, more softer than the Duradin. So you want they giving them strike first ability is always good. Like, I can see that use, especially on several units. And the other one, however, I feel like this has less to do, like swift disengage. This will have less to do with fighting. I think this will have a lot more utility especially in the objective play. So basically, just allowing a unit to retreat at the end of combat. That I think can have a really big use, because you just look at all the units that can retreat and don't have to get stuck in combat prolonged periods of time, so, like especially with the objective play. So think about it. Get a whole bunch, get a unit of I don't know, like dark spears or sort of executioners in combat. Well, then the combat's done. Well, now you spring this on them, and basically then they just run off and are just camped out an objective, not being threatened the next turn. Like that can be pretty good. Like I can definitely see some utility with that. The problem with my issue with the other one, the Strike First effect, that I think definitely has. Don't get me wrong, I do think Strike First is good, but when we get into a lot of the Elf War Scrolls, I kind of feel like a lot of them really don't. I think on average don't have the hitting power of a lot of other units. So I don't know. I don't know if you really want to put a lot of them in prolonged combat. I think a lot of them. I can definitely see like savvy generals wanting to spam the disengage. The disengage order more than anything, to keep them alive longer, keep them on objectives longer, not getting them pinned down as much. But maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see, because there are some definite heavy hitters in there. Like, it's not universally fragile. Yeah. So overall, even though there's less of them, I think out of all of them, I think I really like the Duerden orders. I just feel they're just very characterful for the units. And come on, let's be honest right here. I think we've seen time and time again a good ward usually trumps pretty much any fancy parlor trick of anything else. So I can expect to see that spammed quite a bit. Remember, there's three. You can use one order up to 3 times. So expect. So in layman's terms, for practicality purposes, most probably like heavy dwarf armies, they're probably just going to have almost universal ward going on. So that's just something to consider. So yeah, overall, yeah, definitely solid A, B, B plus on the other. So yeah, not bad. Okay, one last thing. Sorry for interrupting. One last thing. Okay, I just need you to hear me out right here. So there's definitely there's been a general grumbling amongst people about the fact is, as you've probably seen right now, and you're going to see throughout the book here, there's definitely a trend where there's not quite as much overlap in abilities from the previous book, where, okay, basically, like, all elf abilities only affect elves, all human abilities only affect humans, all dwarf abilities only affect dwarves, or sorry, Duerden. I'm trying to force myself to learn the name. A lot of people were disappointed because they were hoping for a lot more interaction between the different races. Honestly, overall, I think I broadly agree. I think there definitely should be, at least in down the road, at least, greater integration of the different units in the book. Because, for the record, I don't actually think we're going to lose elves and dwarves in the book long term. I feel like they've been too heavily established in the cities that we will always have just Duerden and elf sub-factions in Cities of Sigmar. Even if some more models get phased out, I do believe new ones will be phased in. So that's beside the point. For this book, I think I understand why they did it. Now I have no idea if this is really true, but I think how their reasoning is that they put a lot more thought into how all the sub-factions interact with each other, and because there's a lot more rules that buff units, there's a lot more flavor for individual sub-factions, and I feel they did this for the siloing more is because here's the thing. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people pointed out the last Cities of Sigmar book didn't have a lot of battle traits or very broad battle traits, is because they had to balance every single unit's ability and the army's battle traits against so many different units among so many different books. Because the last book, you weren't just balancing, let's say, every battle trait from every city against just the book's content. You were also balancing against every Stormcast Eternal model, and every Sylvaneth model, and every Caradron Overlord model. The rules had to be kept somewhat vague, otherwise, you're accidentally going to run into, accidental cheese building, or you made this complex rule that, oh wait, but when combined with this Thunderer unit, and also combined with this ironclad gunship over here, this is the most broken thing of all time. So because of that, that's why all the cities rules were very intentionally vague. Now that they're getting more complex, in order for the sake of balancing, they made them much more limited on what they can affect, so there aren't any accidental broken combos they can do. So by doing this, I feel they made the individual sub-factions much stronger now. So basically, I feel like now there's definitely a reason to bring every single sub-faction, whereas before there were clear losers in the book in a lot of ways. Like, there were just stuff you're just never going to see, and you never did. Here, you might actually see it. Like, for example, when we get into it, we might actually see Shadow Blades on the table. I know, shocking. Now, so basically, what I'm just trying... So just to reiterate one last time before moving on, I feel like they did this on purpose in order to make individual sub-faction rules more impactful, and definitely plays more like Auric War Clans now, with the Cruel Boys and the Iron Jaws, blah, blah, blah. But a little more interactivity than that. Now, I feel down the line, as they update the different sub-factions and add more models, they will integrate it more. But I think people will get used to it in the short run. Now, so all I'm trying to say is I understand why they did it, but I do broadly agree they should integrate them more down the line. But anyway, that's enough of that. Okay, moving on to general enhancements. Okay, so human enhancements. Again, there's individual, each race of units gets its own thing now. So again, like I said, that's just how it is for this book. Gonna have to get used to it, I guess. So human enhancements. Yes, Sentinels of Order, the command traits for them. Overall, these are pretty good. Honestly, nothing's terribly broken in this regard. Like, for example, you can make him a priest and give him a unique prayer. Just gives +1 to wound. That's okay, I guess. Priests are kind of whatever to me. Like, I definitely see the use of them, and I definitely see the appeal of them. But I don't know. I've never really been. I always feel wizards trump priests 9 out of 10 times for most utility. But hey, that's just me. The next one gives your general can only be wounded on a 4+. That's fine. Also, free guild only. Okay, well, I guess, all right, good to know. But, I mean, I don't know why you would ever give a non-free guild disability, but whatever. The Master of Ballistics. So, this is one of those lovely, gives an additional ability to a universal command ability. So, yeah, so when the general issues all-out attack to a Castellite unit. For those who haven't figured it out, Castellite is a specific keyword on some free guild models, generally the ones with the shield. So just something to consider. So basically, if he issues the all-out attack to them, they also get +1 to wound as well, but to missile weapons. So basically, that one I actually think definitely might have some usage, because I feel like the shooting in free guild is actually not that bad, and +1 to wound definitely has some usage. So yeah, that one I think definitely I could see some use from that. And the last one is basically if he makes a charge, he can reroll his charge, and if he does charges, other things can charge with an 18. That actually is pretty good too. My only issue with that, however, is that this one's basically kind of screaming to be put on cavalry, and I don't know. I don't think free guild cavalry is the greatest thing in the world, but still charging is also pretty good. However, once we get into it though, I just want to point out too, I don't actually think free guild in general want to be charging in a lot of cases, because as some people have pointed out, they kind of don't really have a true hammer unit in combat anymore, because the army lost its old hammer that were the great swords, and they didn't really get a replacement. So free guild is definitely more defensive and shooty rather than chargy and fighty in a lot of cases. So I don't know. Besides their cavalry, that is. So yeah, that one, don't get me wrong, the reroll charges still has a lot of usage, especially if given on a monster. But I don't know. I think I would probably lean towards the Master of Ballistics. But yeah, we'll see where the meta ends up. So, the Duardin, I'm going to remember, it's not dwarves anymore, and elf command traits. So, the Duardin command traits are pretty much what I expected, you know, heavy emphasis on, like, grudging and durability. One lets him get the strike first effect, but against a chosen hero. That's pretty good, mostly because a couple Duardin heroes are actually pretty good in combat, so that can be pretty good too. Not sure if I would pick that as command trait though, because it can be a little bit selective. But you know, if you got some enemy heroes that really need to die, that can definitely be a good thing. Yeah, the next one, however, I think a lot of people are probably going to take. So basically, at the end of the phase, at the end of the turn, you basically roll a 3+ for every wound he's taken, and you just get them back. So if you're a person who just rolls 3+s a lot, that you'll basically just make this thing indestructible if your opponent can't kill him fast enough. So yeah, that one personally, I expect to see most people take for Duardin generals. And the last one basically just makes him a priest. Again, I think I've kind of made my opinions on priests. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some good, you know, there is some legitimate utility of priests, but would I pick it as a command trait? Probably not. But again, that's just me. The elven command traits, honestly, they didn't impress me quite to the same extent as the other ones. Well, you know, there's one where, you know, he basically deals mortal wounds for, like, missed attacks. That's kind of fluffy, and that could also be pretty funny, too, if, you know, if you just really get lucky and he just mortal wounds an enemy to death that's attacking him. That's always funny. Then again, like, they'll generally elven generals are pretty fragile, so I don't know how much you would probably want to count on that. One is a wizard only. You know, basically just add +1 to casting and unbinding. That's good. Yeah, good utility. If you're using like a wizard general, go for it. You know, this one and the last one is probably the most restrictive. It has to apply to like a rider with a black dragon. Basically, you just take a mortal wound, and the mount. I just want to point this out here because you might read it wrong. The mount gets +1 attack for that. And no, you can't. And no, the mortal wound cannot be stopped in any way. So, you know, if you got a kitted out general on a black dragon, you want to just go ham wild. That can be pretty good. So, yeah, these are okay. Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see some use from all of these, some justification. Personally, I think if I had to pick, oh, this is a hard one. You know what? I think I'd probably like the human command traits the best, mostly just because it has the most variety. Even though I think the Duardin has the best one overall with like the 3+ heal wound one. I just like that. I just like the idea of that one, even if I think the overall table for humans is better. So that's my 2 cents on those. Now, human artifacts, however, ooh boy, now we're kind of getting into some spicy stuff here. Yeah, so like overall, this is a very solid table. Like I see a lot of good stuff. No one thing is just a clear auto take. You know, you got one that basically lets you stop units from running on a 4+. That can be good in certain builds. Not sure if I'd make that the auto. I'm not sure it's quite auto take, but it definitely has some utility. He increases the range on ranged weapons. Like I said, this book's got some good shooting, so that's good. That's good. Yeah, you know. Now the wizard only one is pretty good too. It's one use only. I'm not a big fan of those, but I do think it has some definite utility where you can just basically just instantly neuter, you know, enemy casting for a turn. Like that has some definite utility. Personally, I don't think it has as much utility as just +3 to your range of your weapons, but it can. Actually, no, I take that back. No, I think against certain builds that can definitely work. Like going up against like Lumineth Realm Lords or Disciples of Tzeentch, you definitely want to neuter as much of their spell casting as possible. Disciples of Tzeentch especially, so that can work good too. Sigmarite Warhammer, just make one of your weapons flat out better. Plain, simple, easy to remember. You know, a fighting general on a Griffin, go for it. Yeah, that's good. You know, one is again another once per battle, and you return D6 wounds. Again, not a big fan of D6 because here's the problem. Whenever someone tells me that those are good, here's the problem. In their heads, when they're rolling that dice, they always assume they're going to roll a 6. And remember, this is once per battle. So yeah, so let's say you roll that dice and you roll a 1. Yeah, you just there's your whole artifact. Your artifact that you get for free at the start of the game. You rolled it and you got 1 wound back. You know, I don't know. I still think it's good, but I don't think it's the best. Now, the last one, in my opinion, I think we're gonna see this one a lot, where you basically just get a reroll on hit, wound, saves per phase. Like that, I've learned from experience that rerolls are definitely worth their weight in gold, because how many times have you rolled a 1 when you really shouldn't have? So that's definitely a solid one. I'm giving the human artifacts a thumbs up. Now, the artifacts for the Duradin and the elves. Duradin one, yeah, I think it seems overall pretty good. First one basically lets you, on a 4+, lets you get to get to add 1 to hit rolls against specific enemy units. Not a big fan of the 4+, but hey, at least you get to do it every hero phase, so it's not like once you foil that 4+ and it's useless. That can definitely have some definite use. The next one is basically, again, a 4+. I don't like those, but it is for every unit within 3. So, if you're stuck in combat, at least you can dish those out quite a bit. Basically just handing out strike last, like that can definitely have some utility. So not bad right there. And basically the last one is just it ignores modifier ability. So that again, Duradin are very durable in general. So basically just ignoring Ren modifiers just makes them more durable. So that's not bad in and of itself. Again, really kind of really digging into the whole idea of we be a grudgin and we be a tankin. That's pretty much the whole two words the Duradin this book live by. So that's all cool. The Elven ones are a little more, I would guess, a little more varied. One basically just makes them invisible if they're more than 12 inches away to missile attacks and stuff. So that's all cool. That's good. Just get there's definitely some offenders in the meta with long range shooting, so that's always good to have. Basically, the next one is I guess it's the equivalent of it's just a weapon buff. Just basically gives a weapon of D3 mortal wounds in addition on sixes. So yeah, that's always fun. Nothing wrong with that. Slap that on something on a black dragon, go nuts. And the next one is basically I like the ability of the last one, but I don't like the restrictions. Basically, you get range on your extra range on your spells, but you have to be on a terrain feature and or contesting an objective. Which, by the way, I just want to point out is perfectly doable. But, again, these kind of abilities are often very heavily, table dependent, And, but, I think it's mitigatable. So, and the elves do have some pretty legitimately good spells. So, yeah, even though I don't like that restriction, I do think this artifact has use. So again, honestly, both ones I think are pretty solid. If I was going to have to truly pick one, the better winner, I think I would have to lean more towards the elf over the Duradin. Not to say that they're bad. I think I just prefer the elven artifacts a bit more. But yeah, I think they all have use. Oh, spells, my favorite thing in the whole world. Yeah. So, yeah, as normal, the humans get more than everyone else. Shocking, I know. Anyway, moving on. Overall, there's some okay and there's some good stuff. Fireball is, it's okay. It's one of those roll 1 for every unit on a 6 stuff. I'm kind of lukewarm on those. There are some good stuff in here. You can get mystifying miasma. I can do some good stuff. Subtracting from enemy statistics. That's always fun. You know, Palette of Doom, I think, can have some usage here. Because there are, stopping units from issuing commands is always a good thing. Reign of Jade. I can't even remember what this one does. You range invisible, roll a dice for each. Only on a 5 that wound is healed. Oh, okay. Oh, actually, it's a healing ability. Oh, for some reason when I first read that, I assumed that it was something to do with like zapping strength. Oh, geez, I gotta memorize these more. All right, never mind. I change it back. That's actually not bad. Transmutation of lead is that's okay, I guess. Now here's an old returning favor, the twin-tailed comet. So basically, if you successfully cast it, you pick an enemy within range, invisible to the caster, and it's one of those draw a line things. And then you roll against like excuse me, if you then roll a line against it, and then against their bravery, and then it does mortal wounds. I don't quite understand how a twin-tailed comet does that, but okay, yeah, I can see some usage in that. And of course, there's a good old-fashioned wild form. Now, one thing I do want to point out here too is a lot of spells that used to be on like wizard, wizards in the like models, they're a lot of them lost their unique spells. A lot of them just went into like the universal spell lore tables, and which personally I don't really know how to make of that, because I that seems to be a trend going on. They're taking more rules off. They're taking more rules off like the war scrolls and putting a lot more into the army abilities. So, whatever. That's neither here nor there. Wild forms, okay, I guess. It's whatever. Overall, I would say the human spell lore. I think it's good overall. There's definitely some good ways of spamming mortal wounds. Now my only other issue is I feel like there's not as much buffing in the spells as I would have liked, and I feel like for the humans at least, because I kind of feel like especially the human sub-faction, it's kind of lacking somewhat in super strong infantry units, and I kind of feel like maybe some extra buffing from spells could have helped mitigated that. But no, they seem to be, they're somewhat more offensive related, with charging and causing mortal wounds. So don't let you think that I think the spell lore is bad. I actually think the spell lore is actually pretty good. But I just kind of feel like Free Guild in general really didn't need more offense. I think they're doing okay in that regard. I think they needed more stuff like buffing to durability and buffing their stats. They don't need more shooting. But that's neither here nor there. I'd give this a solid B. Maybe C+, only for that reason. Not that I think the spells are bad. Okay, so now for the Elf and Duerden spells, air quotes. Okay, so the elf spell table is definitely more limited, but I definitely see some bangers in here. Now Zap Strength, Zap Strength definitely I feel has some interesting connotations, because okay, on first read I thought it just said, okay, subtract 1 from enemy wound from attacks with wound rolls from enemy attacks. Okay, great. But then I actually looked at it a little bit more, and it doesn't actually specify that it has to be melee. So I think that means basically it could also subtract wound rolls for enemy shooting as well. So that actually could be very interesting. A lot of people are not really liking, the whole 60-person unit of Bliss Barb archers and Hedon Knights of Slaanesh. Well, does that mean I can just -1 from their wound rolls for their arrows? Something to think about, especially for a casting value 6 spell. Just saying. The Umbral Hex definitely has some use. You just pick one enemy unit within range, and basically basically every time they roll for Battle Shock, they roll 2d6 instead of d6. Now that can be really big, but it can also do nothing in a lot of cases. Like for example, what if the unit until the start of each unit time a battleshot roll is made. Yeah. Okay, I was just making sure I read it right. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Now, what it really would like basically you just rolling 2d6 instead of d6 for battleshock is definitely good, but again, it's very matchup dependent. Like Oziark Bone Reapers won't fear this at all, and also units that just generally don't take battleshock very often probably won't be scared too much. What I was trying to read and see what was going on was did it like automatically make the unit do a battleshock test. That would have made this a lot better. Like, you know, but it is what it is. It's an okay one, not quite as good as Sap Strength. Now the Tenumbral Blades, however, this one I think is very interesting. So basically, now, the way this is worded, mind you, I actually had to reread this because the way it was worded was kind of weird. So basically, you cast this on Cities of Sigmar Elf unit, and if I'm reading this correctly, basically that means whenever this unit attacks, enemies don't basically get a save against their melee weapons. By that I mean is like essentially if let's say an elf unit attacks another unit melee, the other unit just can't make armor saves at all. So basically they essentially just have like rend a billion. So if I'm reading this correctly, and I hope I am, that is potentially very, very good. Because like just think about it, like it basically just means your enemy, as long as you can hit and wound, your enemy is just tanking, is going to be tanking wounds like no, sorry, not tanking, just going to be taking wounds like crazy. So hopefully I am reading that wrong, because if so, that is basically an auto take in a lot of cases. Now, just for the record though, if I am reading that right, I don't think it's going to be particularly like game breaking, because as I mentioned before, a lot of close combat elf units aren't particularly like earth-shattering in combat in general, so I don't really think you're going to be sweeping tournaments with that. But you're definitely going to hurt what you hit. I'll put that right out there. Now moving on to so basically as expected, the Duardin don't actually get spells. They just get prayers for their priests. So it is pretty good. So the Rune of Unaltering Aim. Basically if answered, you pick a Duardin unit wholly within range, and you basically just add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons by that unit. So that one's pretty good. The Dispossessed especially have some very good shooting, especially with like their main shooting unit. So yeah, that has some use. 3+ to go off isn't too bad. And also the Rune of Oak and Steel, again, another 3+, not too bad. So you basically just pick a Duardin unit wholly within range, and basically they get subtract 1s from runes for attacks that target them. So for units, dispossessed units especially are very tanky in general, and just basically making them harder to wound is just a very good thing. Like this is going to make, like, for when we get to Ironbreakers, you'll see why making them -1 to wound is going to be very good and going to really frustrate your opponent, especially when comboed in with, let's say, like they're like giving them ward saves, etc. And the last one, Wrath and Rune, is I don't know. I don't like this one quite as much. So you just you roll 6 dice, and for each 5+, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. And in addition, if the unit suffers 3 or more mortal wounds when the prayer is answered, that unit is ruined until the start of your next one. So what is ruined? Well, basically ruined is you just ignore positive modifiers to save rolls for attacks that target that unit. So basically, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a poor man's Tenumbral Blades, except they do cause mortal wounds. So I guess that's pretty good. That one's pretty good. Yeah, I guess that's okay, but I don't know. I think I would definitely probably go for like Oath and Steel, probably more so than the others, or Rune of Oath and Aim. But yeah, I can still see that working. Now, wait, hold on a second. In addition, if the unit suffers 3 or more mortal... Okay, yeah, I was just rereading to make sure I read that right. Yeah, so the thing is, it's like that the second part only activates if it takes 3 or more mortal wounds. So technically, if you only roll 2, you're not even getting the second half. So, like I think it sounds better in theory than it really is, but whatever. Overall, yeah. So basically, yeah, I would probably say of the three spell tables, I probably have to say I think the elf table is probably the best overall. Now the human one is pretty good, but like I said, it doesn't really give the kind of buffs I was looking for the free guild in general. The elven one, very good. I think it has one of the best spells in the book, and some other two really solid ones. It's just a solid table overall. And the Druid prayers, yeah, they're pretty good. They're very good too. So of the three, I'm probably gonna have to say, I'm probably gonna say again, I think I prefer the elven. I think I definitely like the elven table the best. But yeah, but I think again, as usual, all three definitely pull their weight for what they do. Okay, one of my favorite things, the city sub-faction. So, as predicted, the city sub-faction rules have been greatly streamlined. Now, as before, they were basically like, mini armies in the book itself. Now they basically just confer a rule just a rule that you basically, build your army around. Another thing I just want to bring up too, they don't seem to give conditional battle line anymore, which I found was interesting. Yeah, that's all within all that you can get you'll get conditional battle line in this book through other means. So I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. So basically, the whole big thing with Hammerhall Akshi is that I believe if I'm reading this correctly, one hero can be given 2 orders to give out instead of 1. So remember, how at the beginning of your turn, every single hero you place down 1 order for each hero you have on the table. Well, 1 you can give 2. That definitely can be 2. I can definitely see some usage of a hero giving out 2 orders instead of just 1. Not sure if you would really want to build your army around that, but, it's not nothing either. The next big thing with that is also, if you include Havantis Firestrike as an ally in this army, you get 1 extra command point at the start of the turn. Like, exactly the same as it was in the last book. Another thing, but I just want to point out, remember, Havantis Firestrike is not coalition. I repeat, he is not coalition. He is an ally. So if you're including him in the army, that's probably the only Stormcast you're going to be including. Because I'm not entirely sure how much he costs. Again, that's mostly just for fluff reasons. Hammerhall Akshi, it's going to depend on how powerful orders end up being in the long run. So if they end up being a lot stronger than I think they are, then this might turn out to be good. But we'll see. Tempest Eye. So Tempest Eye, basically Tempest Eye units and allied Caradron Overlords, Sky Vessel units, including embarked units, can retreat and still shoot. So this is what I was saying earlier, where allies, ally units still get some ability. So in this regard, yes, Tempest Eye still benefits Caradron Overlord models if you bring them. But what has changed now is they are allies, not coalition. So it greatly reduces how many you can actually bring. And unfortunately, due to the points cost and how allies, the points limits are, you won't be able to include an Ironclad in a Tempest Eye anymore. They're just too expensive. But I did do the math. Technically you can bring a Frigate and some Sky Wardens, whatever the name of the basic Caradron Overlord troops are. You can bring 1 squad of them. So you can still bring those in the army. And they can retreat and still shoot. So that's okay, I guess. Again, Tempest Eye, I don't know. Before it used to be one of the better cities. We'll see how the meta turns out, but it all depends on how big retreating and shooting is really going to be. But we'll find out. Okay, Hallowheart. Oh, hath the mighty might have fallen. So Hallowheart, its new big claim to fame is now Hallowheart Wizards. Should you choose, you can cast spells on 3d6. When rolling for getting spells off. Now, sounds good, right? Well, until you realize if you roll a natural 10 up, that wizard then takes d3 mortal wounds. So that is a bit of a drawback. However, wizards in this army are very cheap. So if you throw enough wizards in there, I don't know, you statistically at best you can still get 2 casts off with them before they die at worst. So that can still be pretty good. And as we've learned from the Slaves to Darkness book, 3d6 casting is always appreciated. So, yeah, I can definitely see some use in that. Now for Hammerhall Gyra. Now, before it was just you picked one or the other. Now Hammerhall Gyra really is its own separate thing. Basically, this one, okay, so what basically this does is it gives you one additional reinforcement limit. So basically, whatever the reinforcement limit is on any particular game, you get one extra. And in addition to that, free Hammerhall Gyra human units, they all get leadership 10. So that could be pretty good too, because you know, human units, especially like steel helms, you can definitely spam quite a few of those, and giving them a 10 bravery, that's always fun, and just getting more units on the table. So essentially, the theme was, if Hammerhall actually was about having like really skilled commanders, you know, you can use more orders. This is more, Hammerhall Gyra is all about like just, you know, spamming bodies on the table. So, you know, I'm not sure which one will be better. My gut is kind of leaning towards Hammerhall Gyra, because just more units on the table, bigger units, more big units on the table usually is good. But then again, it's also going to be dependent on how good orders end up being. If orders end up being just the best thing ever, then Hammerhall actually has it. But we'll see how the meta turns out. Living City, it's a little different, but the core ability is basically the same. So basically, Living City units and allied Sylvaneth units, basically for every one you include on the table, you can put one in reserve, and then, you know, then you can bring those onto the table essentially through Deep Strike. They have to be within like 6 inches of the table edge and 9 inches away from enemy units. It's essentially if you remember long enough ago, it's the old Wanderer ability from like first edition or whatever. So Living City is essentially now, it's the Deep Strike city. So if you like Deep Striking, this is the city for you. And again, it gives incentives to bring in Sylvaneth, but again, they are not coalition anymore. They are allied. So you're going to have to be cognizant on what you actually want to bring for this, if you want to bring them at all. So yeah. Greywater Fastness. This one is, well, at first I thought it was okay, but now I'm actually reading it more, I think it's actually very good. So basically, it allows you to use like the all-out attack ability in the all-out attack command ability in the shooting phase up to 3 times. However, it doesn't say you have to use it 3 times, and if you only use it, if I'm reading this correctly, if you only use it 2 times, you basically just don't spend command points on it. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, or maybe this needs to be errated. But basically, as long as if I only use it, if I use the ability twice in the same phase, I don't spend command points. Only if I spend it 3 times. Yeah, I think the wording on this could be better. But if rules is written, I think that's how it's supposed to work. So, yeah, if that is true, that Greywater Fastness is a solid city then. Yeah, that's definitely something you can build your army around. Lethis, on the other hand, is a little weird. So basically, it allows human and allied Stormcast Eternal heroes that are not wizards, mind you. Keep that in mind. They become priests. And they also automatically know a unique prayer. Basically, it just means the prayer makes it so that an enemy unit can't use ward saves. Now, before you just instantly write that off, do not forget, there are some very annoying units in the game right now that have like 4 plus ward saves. And I can't tell you how much relief it would have been for some people if they could just turn those ward saves off. So, well, I think Lethis doesn't really buff things. Again, it only buffs human and allied Stormcast Eternal heroes. I'm not completely discounting that prayer, especially with ward saves running around rampant. I think that actually could have a justification for going with. And Vindicarum, basically, this one is pushing the holy light angle. Basically, you can essentially cast the rally command for units that are within 3 inches of the enemy, and flagellant units can rally on a 5+. So basically, this whole thing is encouraging you to bring flagellants, get them into combat, and then be able to rally multiples of them in combat on 5+. So ultimately, I think rally in combat, I think, is always good. It sounds very good in theory, but I'm not sure how good flagellants are going to be overall. So it's all going to basically depend on how much people like that rally ability. I'm going to say I like Vindicarum, but of the three, I think I probably like Greywater Fastness the most. I just feel that just has the most that just has the most universal buffing ability. So yeah, so I'm gonna go with Greywater Fastness of these three, but I do think the other two are not without merit. Okay, Excelsis. Excelsis, what happened to ye? So basically, all Excelsis does, it just gives your monsters +1 wounds. Couldn't have at least been 2 wounds. Just make it an even number. And in addition to this, Excelsis Free Guild Cavaliers. That's basically those new mounted knight units. Basically, they can cause mortal wounds to units within 3 inches. Cool, I guess. I don't know. This one is okay, I guess, but I really wish it buffed monsters more. Like when I think of Excelsis, I don't really think mounted knights, mounted cavalry units, I don't know about this one. But again, it's ultimately going to be, it's also going to depend on how good the new Cavalier units are. So maybe we'll come back to this one. Settler's Gain. Basically, if I had to sum this up, it's basically a poor man's Hollow Hearts. Don't know what else to say. It basically just gives wizards +1 to their casting, which, in my opinion, is just flat out worse than 3d6, even if it does cause mortal wounds. The other thing it has going for it is that at the beginning of each hero phase, if your general is within like I think it's like 3 inches of an allied Lumineth Realm Lord's hero, you get an additional command point. And keep that in mind, it's each hero phase. So you could potentially be getting like 2 extra command points a turn, a battle round. A battle round. So that's okay. Again, I definitely don't think that's the best city, but Lumineth Realm Lord's heroes are generally pretty cheap, so fitting in an allied one shouldn't be too hard. So yeah, it's okay, I guess. Misthaven. Now, Misthaven, I think I can think from a competitive standpoint, this one will be high in the running. So okay, so basically, people watching, do you guys remember, the new Blades of Corn came out and everyone was just spamming that one Blood Tithe ability where they could just move. And they can move directly into combat. Well, that is basically this. Yeah, basically you can pick so you get out of sequence moving where you can pick 3 units and they can each move d6 inches or 2d6 if they're mounted, and they can move into combat. So anyone who's been seeing the craziness that Blades of Corn can do with that, you can definitely see it with this. So Misthaven, in my opinion, is going to be high in the running for what people are going to be choosing as their main city. Probably that one and Hammerhole Gyra, in my honest opinion. But we'll ultimately have to see where the meta ends up. But from the top 3 that I potentially I'm seeing some potential with, it's going to be Misthaven, Hammerhole Gyra, and Greywater Fastness. Those are my personal favorites, just off the top of my head from just seeing them all. But again, we'll have to end up seeing what the meta ends up in that regard. The grand strategies and the battle tactics are whatever, they're their thing. Honestly, again, I'm just gonna, you can just read them off the screen here. Basically, there's nothing. With the problem with it has. I think they all have the same problem. A lot of grand strategies and battle tactics. I think most people are just going to take the original ones. Some of their grand strategies are okay, but I'm just not going to touch on them. Just stop the screen and read them over if you like. I'm just not really interested in them personally. And the core battalions, as usual, it's just basically the core battalion only includes the newer units that were added to the army. Shocking, I know. Also, all free guilds. This is again because we're getting so many free guild. This army is really shilling a lot to free guild in general. So hopefully in the next update of this book, we get a little break from free guild all the time. But we'll see what happens. It's whatever. It's just Unified and Slayer. So whatever. I honestly don't think we're gonna. The fact that it's Unified is one thing, but I don't think people are just going to bring strictly free guild. So, we'll see. Maybe we'll see you. Okay, so Talia Vedra, Linus of the Parch. I hope I said that correctly. So this is the new big centerpiece hero unit for the free guild. So she's from the way I looked at it, the typical mounted monster hero. Overall she's got some pretty decent stats. Nothing groundbreaking, but still nothing terrible either. Funny enough, she is always the War Master, but only if you go in Hammerhall Akshi. So that's a little bit strange. I guess from a lore perspective that makes sense, but a little bit I don't know, a little bit restrictive in that regard, but whatever. Well, she comes base with a ward of 6+. Don't really know how relevant that's ever going to be, but she's got some good abilities. Like for example, she can basically make it that she can issue the rally command 3 times in a phase, and also if to units that are within 3 inches of the enemy. That is a common thing I am noticing in this book in general. There's a lot of ways to rally while units are within 3 of an enemy. That seems to be an ongoing theme, especially for the free guild. So that's not bad. That's not bad. Oh, and it goes without saying, they can rally on a 4+. Like honestly, at this point there are so many ways to rally on a 4+. I kind of feel like they should just make the rally on a 4+, but you can only bring back like 5 models tops. I don't know, because there's just so many units that can just make it a 4 instead of a 6. I don't know. On top of that, she also has Unparalleled Tactician, which basically means that if when she issues orders to heroes, this unit can issue 2 instead of 1. So basically, she just gets the Hammerhall 2 orders instead of 1 automatically. So the way I'm probably reading this is that she can do this, plus another hero in that army can do this as well. So basically, you're getting like 2 extra orders in that army if you bring her. So obviously the idea is you're going to bring her in a Hammerhall Akshi army. But it also goes without saying too, she also has the Hammerhall Akshi keyword, so she won't gain any other city abilities. So I don't know. I think you're pretty much very encouraged to bring her in that. She's also got a couple other abilities. I don't know. She's got the paralyzing venom, her monstrous rampage. I didn't even read this. Like, pick one enemy monster that made a charge this turn and is within 3 of this unit. Roll a dice, a 3+, a strike last effect applies to that monster. So another strike last effect. Overall, that's okay. For the most part, I'd say she's an okay combat monster for her price, but I think she brings a lot of utility to the army, as to be expected. So yeah, and apparently, and from what I can see, she's priced pretty reasonably. So yeah, I could definitely see her coming in the army. And I also let's just come out and say it. She's got a gorgeous model. Like this is I can only hope the Chaos Manticore gets updated like this. Like, holy jeez, it just blows the other Manticores out of the water, like without doubt. Okay, so the other big new hero, the Pentafex Zenestra, Matriarch of the Great Wheel. Basically, she is your atypical buff centerpiece. She's got like a billion rules. I don't even really feel like going over all of them, so just feel free to no-clip the picture and just read them all off. But basically, she's just one jump. She can't fight worth anything, but that's not why you bring her. She's just because she has basically like unlimited rules. She's a priest, just putting that out there. 4+ ward, 9 wounds. She's got, so she's reasonably durable. got lots of good prayers and buffs, and she does quite a bit of mortal wounds in combat too. But I'm gonna be perfectly honest here. I don't know why you would ever put her anywhere towards the front lines, to be honest, because her whole shtick is basically just granting buffs on other units. So yeah, she's an okay buff. She's a pretty good buff piece with no attack output whatsoever. So that it is what it is. Oh, funny thing with her though, she is basically a funny thing with her is she's actually basically the only way to bring flagellants as battle line. Yeah, seriously, yeah. So you have to bring her to bring flagellant battle line. So make that of what you will. So I guess she would be pretty good in like a themed army. And speaking of flagellants, basically they are objectively better than they were before. They got a save finally. They got better overall attack output. And also they do mortal wounds now when they're slain, it appears. Let's see. Average time this model is yeah. Basically they have you know the zombie drag down rule they have in Soulblight Gravelords? Yeah, basically the same thing. So these are basically living zombies if you want to look at it that way. And they combo, I think, pretty well with Pontifex. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but these two, those two units, there's a reason they're side by side. They combo pretty good together, and on top of that, flagellants do pretty good also in Vindicarum. So these two are basically screaming to be put in a Vindicarum army. So yeah, there's your devoted of Sigmar theme right there. Funnily enough, also, the Free Guild Marshal actually made the cut, even though so many of the older Free Guild models got cut. Personally, I think the only reason he did is because technically he looks a little bit too much like Karl Franz, and they didn't want to put him back in the old world because it would have been too jarring, given that it basically takes place like a couple hundred years before the guy was born, so they'd probably just, okay, well, we can't include an old world, we might as well just keep him here for whatever sake. Honestly, he's pretty similar to he was before. I think he's a little bit less durable than he was in the last book, but I think he's got a little extra like utility. You know, he can now he can do the roar command to 2 units instead of 1. You know, he's got a charge with his lance, so that's all good. But he also has like a special ability as well. So basically, if this unit is included, so it's a once per battle ability, mind you. So don't forget that. Basically, when he orders are being given to heroes, this unit can give 2 orders instead of 1. So again, another way to get a hero with 2 orders instead of 1. So again, that's a theme I'm starting to notice a lot too. That there's ways to give heroes more than 1 order. And again, just in case you forgot, remember at the beginning of in your hero phase, you can give each hero at the beginning of your hero phase, you can give each hero 1 order, but him you can give 2. So yeah, that's again that can either be that might be really good depending on how not meta breaking, but how tactically sound orders are in the grand scheme of things. So we'll see how that works out. Other than that, he's a pretty good combat monster, just same as the other than that, yeah, he's pretty much the same as he was before otherwise. So the new kid on the block, the Free Guild Marshal, or he's basically a Free Guild General, but it is what it is. So basically, he's an updated version of the Free Guild General. His big thing is he's got this thing called the Relic Envoy. That guy he tags along with him. So basically, at the start of your hero phase, you have 2 things you can do with him. You have to choose if he's going to keep the envoy or not keep the envoy. So basically, if you choose for the Relic Envoy to like leave him, or as it's described, give a message, basically you pick one other friendly human Cities of Sigmar unit within 12 of him, and at the start of your next hero phase, the next time that unit receives a command point is not spent. So basically, he basically can give you a potential free command points in all terms. But if you keep him close by, however. Basically the rule is you can carry in addition to, so basically if you keep him around though, he gets an additional he can do an additional heroic action. Sorry. And he also comes specific with his own personal heroic action call, where basically he can pick 3 human units that are wholly within 18, and for each one picked, you roll 2d6. If the roll is equal to or less than the unit's bravery, then basically each of those models count as 2 instead of 1 for the purpose of contesting objectives. So essentially what you can do is you can either, his ability is, you can either get a free command point usage later in the turn, or you can make a unit count as 2 units on an objective. So honestly, both those abilities aren't too bad, because I can legitimately see a reason for both. Honestly, I think depending on the situation, I think I kind of like the two heroic actions, especially because with his unique one, because making a unit count as 2 instead of 1 when contesting objectives can be really big, considering how many bodies you can spam in this army. So that can be really good too. He also does like a rousing command thing, where basically he can instead of to heroic action below with this unit instead of any other heroic action. That's per value you can carry out. Oh, wait. I didn't read this right. Oh, okay, sorry. His rousing speech is once per battle, you can carry out the deliver rousing speech heroic action below with this unit instead of any other heroic actions you can carry out with. Oh, so it kind of, if I'm reading this right, it looks like he can only commit this heroic action once. Oh, okay, I guess that's okay, I guess. But if it's only once per game, if it's only once per battle, that makes it a lot less good. So, I don't know. I think he's still pretty good. But if I'm reading that correctly, that he definitely did drop a notch on my top free guild units right there. Otherwise, yeah, he's pretty cheap. He's a cheap general. He is what he is. So a free guild Cavalier Marshal. Basically, this is your mounted version of your general, and as to be expected, he's basically all about buffing, your other Cavalier models. So, basically when his big thing is when he does a finest hour. Basically, until that he can basically add 3 to charge rolls for him and any other free guild Cavaliers. Basically, those are your new mounted knights. He can add 3 to their movement. Also, the strike first effect applies when he charges, and also in addition, when in the combat phase, if this unit made a charge move in the same turn after this unit fought for the first time, okay, yeah, so it's about what I expected. He gets strike first when he charges, and also after attacking, he can immediately select another Cavalier Knights unit, and they can immediately attack after. So yeah, this guy is basically to make like mounted free guild armies more viable. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think those units are okay. He's definitely pretty durable. He's got some okay attack output. Basically, it's kind of this guy's utility is he doesn't quite have the same like generalist utility that the unmounted free guild general has. And honestly, if I probably had to pick between them, I'd probably go with the unmounted general, mostly because I generally lean more towards infantry than cavalry. But if you're a cavalry fighter, I can definitely see the use of this guy. Also, there's the Alchemite Warforger. He's basically, surprisingly, he's actually a collegiate arcane unit. I'm a little bit surprised by that. He didn't really kind of look to me like a collegiate arcane hero, but it's a brave new world. Basically, he's pretty good. He essentially, one of the things he can do is he's got a hero phase ability where basically he can either stoke or expend power. If he stokes his power, he basically adds +1 to his casting. But if he expends his power, he can't cast any spells. Keep that in mind. But until the start of your next hero phase, add 1 to save rolls for Cities of Sigmar human units while they're wholly within 12. So basically, he can add 1 to his casting if you're going to be using him as for his wizarding abilities, or he can add +1 to save rolls for units around him. So that's some pretty good utility. Human only, unfortunately. Also, he has a built-in spell, so it's called the Blazing Weapon. And it's basically he just picks a unit and like they cause mortal wounds in addition to their regular attacks on hit rolls of 6. So honestly, that is pretty. He can either add +1 to save rolls, or he can give mortal wounds to units. He's a wizard. He has buffs to his own wizarding. He's okay in melee, surprisingly. Yeah, if it wasn't for the fact he's kind of fragile with only a 5+ save, I'd definitely put him up there. But he's a pretty good buff piece. I actually kind of wish he may have been the one unit who I wished affected all of the different racial units. But yeah, si casa su casa. Forgive me if I use that in the wrong context. The Battle Mage. Wow, this guy went through some changes. So the big thing with this guy is that he basically doesn't have a unique spell anymore, depending on what you bring. Now he actually gets no unique spells, but he basically gets a bunch of different abilities that changes him up no matter what you pick. I'm not going to go through all of them because I'm not too big on the Battle Mage, but a few of them are okay and a few of them aren't. Like, I mean, he can get a ward save and he can add +1 to casting, but I don't know when you would ever give this guy +2 attacks. Like, this guy's got a 6+ save. Like, when would you ever use him in combat? But regardless, this guy is he's pretty fragile, but he's very, very cheap for what it is. So once again, his basic thing is allowing you to spam cheap wizards in the army, which has always just basically been his objective value in most cases. And then, of course, there's the Battle Mage on Griffin. Once again, he survived the call of the original Free Guild units, probably because he comes in the same kit as the Karl Franz one, but that's neither here nor there. Pretty much, like I said before, he's pretty much the same as the old one. His rules are pretty similar. He's got that Gurish ferocity where he can add 1 to damage characteristic for his mount attacks against enemy monsters. And in addition to this, he does actually come with a built-in spell, which is kind of interesting. So basically, actually, I didn't even read this one. So range 18, cast of 7. Let's see, pick a straight line point, and then the closest point on the 2 plus. It's one of those beam attacks, pretty much. That basically does D3 mortal wounds if you're any units along a line that you draw, and then just flat 3 if it's a monster. It's okay. It's whatever. Overall, he's pretty good. He's a caster. He's a monster. He's reasonably durable. Not quite as offensively powerful as the general on Battle Griffin, but still pretty good. Would I ever take him? I don't know. Maybe. Would you take him? Well, you tell me. So the two Battle Mages on stuff. So overall, I'm not going to go over too much here because they're pretty similar to where they were before, especially the Battle Mage. Especially these guys. The biggest thing, the change to the Hurricanum is now their importance of battle. Okay, this is actually true for the this is also true for what's it called, the Luminarch. Their buffing abilities only affect human models now, which I think is going to be a lot of shame for a lot of people because they used to affect just Cities of Sigmar units. But now, basically, yeah, it still gives the +1 to hit, but only for human units. Also, their Storm of Shemnet, I can't say it. It's now been changed now. Before, it used to be just flat. It used to be based on his damage table, which has now been removed. Now it's based on the battle round. So you roll a number of dice equal to the battle round. So basically, it ramps up as the battle goes on. So basically, that could be a buff depending on the battle round, and also the fact that you can't lose them because there's no more damage table. But it's also a bit of a nerf for early games because like early on, you're only gonna be rolling like 1 die. So to be fair, I get where they were coming from though, because that was a little too good at times because you could spam a lot of mortal wounds with this guy, especially because he also comes with a chain lightning, which basically just spits out more mortal wounds. And just the regular one, it's basically the same, just no wizard on top. Which you'll probably always just take that because why would you not want the Battle Mage on top? The Battle Mage on Luminarch, pretty much the same. Its special ability now only affects human units, so they only get the ward. Beyond that, it's again, he's pretty much the same as he was before. There isn't anything too remarkably different. Again, you'll probably just take you can take it the Luminarch without the Battle Mage, but I don't know why you would, because I think the Battle Mage adds enough that it warrants the higher price point. Again, he's basically just a mortal wound thrower. His Burning Gaze spell basically gets pick one enemy unit and it's visible. That unit suffers D3, double the number of mortal wounds caused by it is 10 or more. The Luminarch Battle Mage is it's just a mortal wound spammer, same as always. Okay durability, okay rules, price is pretty good, but you'll probably always just take the one with the Battle Mage. He just adds too much not to. And here's the new, and following the trend of the Gabapalooza and Co. This is the Free Guild Command Corps. Basically, it's a unit with a bunch of characters that basically just act as one unit. So these are an interesting group. Essentially, you get certain abilities as long as certain models in the unit are still alive. Personally, I really like these guys. So they got a lot of character. One thing I really like about this, it's really bringing that gothic high fantasy that the rest of the Age of Sigmar armies had to the Free Guild. Because that was one thing I did objectively not like about the original Free Guild models. They just seemed so out of place with the rest of the setting because they just look too rustic. Now these guys I really feel up that factor. Overall, they got some pretty good rules. Again, they only affect humans, so don't get your hopes up. The surgeon basically it heals nearby units. Human only. You got the spy basically has the ability to I think it has to prevent command abilities from being cast, if I'm reading that right. There's also there's the Great Herald that adds to run and charge rolls, and also what does it also do? If it retreats, and you can also adds D3 inches when your unit retreats, and then of course you have that the tune of the Corpus Summi. What the heck? I didn't even... Oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed that one. What does that even do? You can use this ability while this unit has a Soul Shepherd in the Battle Shock phase. Each time a model would flee from a friendly City of Sigmar human unit, while within 12 on a 4+, that model does not flee. The same unit cannot be affected. Okay. Oh, so it's another do not flee ability. Okay, that's pretty cool. And also Dispatch Spy, yeah. And it's an okay, and believe it or not, it's actually an okay combat unit too, due to the Arch Knight and the Assassin. They both got a pretty good damage profile. Overall, it's a nice support piece. Not a ton of durability, at least not for the cost, but I can definitely see people bringing this, because like I said, as long as you can keep the right unit, the right models alive, you can definitely get some utility out of this unit. And again, it just looks really cool on the tabletop next to a Free Guild Marshal. Free Guild, now the Free Guild Steel Helms and the Free Guild Cavaliers. These are now your new fighty boys now. So essentially, the Free Guild Steel Helms, they are just I would say they're a more streamlined version of the old Free Guild Guard, which was basically like 3 units wrapped up in one. These guys, they're okay overall. Yeah, they got an okay save. Their attack output is whatever. That doesn't, you use these guys to hold the line, not to fight stuff, if we're being perfectly honest. They do have an interesting ability. If the priest that comes in the unit is still alive, you can consecrate objectives, which gives that objective, if it allows units near that objective to get a 6-up ward. That's not bad. Not that great, but it's not that bad. I just wish it affected more units in the army. In addition, they also have the hold the line ability. Basically, this is another thing I've noticed with Free Guild. They're definitely going for command point efficiency. So essentially, if this unit is given the all-out attack or all defense ability, you can pick another unit with this ability. Mind you, by that I mean when it says with this ability, that basically means just another Steel Helms unit, because they're the only one with the ability. Basically, it gets the unit ability as well. So essentially, you get to they just get the ability for free if you keep them close by. So again, good for command point efficiency. And like I said, there's a lot of ways you can buff these guys. You can give them, there's ways to give them wards, like with the character. There's multiple ways to let them rally into combat. There's a lot of ways to put orders on them. They can get additional attack output and running from orders. They look. What I'm trying to say is they're better in paper in practice than they are on paper, because in a vacuum they're okay, but with enough buffs on them, these guys can get very good offensively. But I don't know how good they're going to be defensively, because I think you have better defensive units in the army, which we'll get to soon. The Free Guild Cavaliers, not really much else to say about them. They're just honestly, they're just overall solid, reasonably priced cavalry. They got that charge damage bonus like pretty much everything does. The Arch Knight unit champion's got a better weapon. They've got a 3+ save and 2 wounds. Not bad, not bad. They're reasonably fast, and like I said, if you combine with the Free Guild Marshal on horseback, they also get charge and attack bonuses. Okay, I guess it's probably also worth repeating too that technically if you bring these guys in Excelsis, they also do mortal wounds in combat, but I don't know if you would really take that city just for that. And if we're speaking of cities, technically these guys in Hammerhall Gyra, they would also come with Bravery 10 too, so that's something worth considering. Yeah, so overall, and also this is just want to point that out here too. Since the Free Guild lost their greatswords, these guys are also basically now the closest thing to cheap hammer units in the army. And yeah, they basically unofficially have that role now. So the Free Guild Fusiliers, well, these guys are a little bit interesting because they are a missile unit that also has pretty good defense, which is kind of surprising for a human unit, especially when we basically went through like 2 whole editions of Free Guild Handgunners and Free Guild Crossbowmen having like a 6+ save. So essentially, another thing, notice these guys are not terrible in combat either. Like, they're not great, but they're not beyond salvation like the handgunners were. So these guys you can almost think of as like a quasi combat squad if you have to. So they have multiple fire modes, but again, the problem I have with these multiple fire nodes things is that they require you to be in a fortified position. So basically, how that works is that if you're in a fortified position, you haven't moved previously. So that basically means is that every time you move these, you basically lose access to the 24-inch version of the attack, which is objectively just better. And I think these guys really do, and I think that's a shame because you really do need that weight of attacks because their shooting attacks aren't great. You can definitely make them better with buffs in the army, from Greywater Fastness and certain command abilities, command traits from the human table, but. Overall, no, these guys definitely do need weight of attacks. They also do get like a once per battle. They get to do re-roll hits for attacks, which is actually quite interesting because there's not many, GW has made it very clear they want to kind of try and phase out re-rolling to hit, so the fact that this is even here, even as a once per battle, is interesting. Beyond that, though, even though I'm a little bit annoyed that they have to remain stationary for the 24-inch one, it's still pretty good range, so there probably will be incidents where you can easily get that off, and they're definitely very... they're also very durable, and if you'll probably find out very quickly, they also have the Castellite keyword, and there's many different there's also many different buffs you can get in the army for Castellite units. So keep that in mind with these guys. The next big thing is the Fusil Major. He's like a hero, but on top of that, he also doubles as a combat hero because he's basically a human hero and an ogre strapped together. He's got some pretty good abilities. He's got a nice that his rangefinder ability is pretty nice, and also he has that fortified position thing. to be put out here. Oh, before I forget, I did forget to mention also, one reason you probably do want to keep the Free Guild Fusiliers steady is because when they are in a fortified position, aka they did not move this turn, they also ignore negative modifiers to their save rolls from missile attacks. So basically, if you can keep them still, they have a 24-inch 2 attack, 4+4+ shooting attack, and they ignore negative modifiers to their save from enemy missiles. So yeah, they can really return fire and take quite a bit of damage. But remember, that's only from missile attacks. So don't think they can stand up to like an Iron Jaws charge. They can't. But anyway, both the Fusel Major also has that ability, which makes makes a lot more better on him because he's got a lot more wounds. He's got a better save. He can definitely tank more with it. And again, he's not a slouch in combat either. So this may again, I think this might have been one of the reasons why maybe they thought the Free Guild didn't need another close combat squad, because in a lot of ways their shooting units can actually double as close combat squads a lot more than they could previously. But now, do I think that means they shouldn't have gotten an unmounted hammer unit? Yes, I definitely think they should have. But who knows, maybe in the future sometime. So I'm not going to talk too much on the Free Guild Great Cannon because it's pretty much been talked about quite a bit already. Again, it has the fortified position ability, you know, so basically it gets its improved shooting profile if it holds still, and also it ignores modifiers against from missile weapons. So you know that. So again, you want to keep this guy close. Again, my only issue with these is 24-inch range. Inevitably, I feel is good. They're going to have to move, and that's really annoying because their fortified attack option is not really all that great. So basically, he can only use his Great Cannon Cannonball version and his Armor Piercing Shell if he remains still. If he moves, he has to use the Grape Shot. It's only like range 12. Yeah, that I don't particularly like, but you know, I guess the trade-off is kind of worth it, I guess. Otherwise, there's not really much else to say. I think people have already pretty much seen what this guy can do, more or less. He's a cannon with 3 different firing modes and basically no attack output whatsoever, but pretty reasonably durable. Now, is he going to be worth it as far as artillery goes? He potentially can be, because there's definitely ways you can buff artillery in this army. Now, will he make up, or will he be the reason that artillery makes a comeback in this book? We'll wait and see. Hopefully he does, because I objectively really like the idea of artillery in this army, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so the Steam Commander and the Steam Tank. Honestly, for the most part, major improvement. Both finally now have that oh-so lovable and coveted 2+ save. I mean, I think some people, I forget who said it, but I think there's some people who are saying, like, this is literally just a rolling slab of metal. It should just have a 2+ save, and I agree. So yeah, overall they're both got just objectively better than last edition. Their attacks are somewhat similar, but definitely more consistent. You know, the cannon finally just has a plus modifier to it now, so that's all good and dandy. The Steam Tank Commander definitely much better than before. His more pressure, I think, it works the same as it did last edition, but much better in terms of what it gives. You know, you can give him run and charge or run and shoot, or it can give just +1 attack to its steam cannon and an extra D6 to its steam gun. That whole +2 to the steam gun and like nothing to to its steam cannon, that made no sense the last edition. So finally they just flat out, it shoots more with everything, so that's better. It also finally has a flat movement too. That and the fact that it has a flat amount of close combat attacks just make both these tanks objectively better in basically every single way. Honestly, I think the reason we didn't see them too much last edition is just there was too much randomness for what you were getting. Now that they've definitely toned down that enough, plus upgrading the commander's utility by letting him give extra commands to tanks, I think we will definitely see more utility with both these types of tanks. They're cheap, they're sturdy, they dish out reasonable amount of damage. Yeah, now, are we going to enter the Steam Tank meta? Probably not, but I don't think, but what I'm saying is you won't necessarily get laughed off the table like you would last edition if you really wanted to go all Steam Tank. So, I'll leave it at that. The Wilder Corpse Hunters, these exist. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. They're actually not really all that bad. They're definitely a lot more fragile than your average free guild units, which I guess makes sense because they're basically meant to be scouts. They actually have okay attack output for a relatively cheap unit. I mean, their attacks are nothing to write home about, but just through sheer weight of attacks, they'll probably do some level of damage. On top of that, they also have a reasonably pretty good ranged crossbow attack as well, plus a special weapon. Definitely, in my opinion, though, you definitely probably want these guys more shooting than fighting, so I would probably recommend just kitting them out for ranged combat. And yes, their dogs do add a few extra attacks, but again, you're probably not going to last too long in protracted combat, so you're better off just staying at distance. Beyond that, the main utility I probably see these guys getting is probably just using their movement bonus during the beginning of the game to just camp out objectives early. That's pretty much the only real utility I see with these guys, because otherwise I can't just really see people just taking these when you could just take, more steel helms. But having said that, no, I definitely think you'll probably see at least one or two of these units just for like objective holders and just harassers. But beyond that, yeah, they're just an okay unit overall, I guess. Heskel, Hexbane, and Hexbane's Hunters. These are two more units that also exist. Honestly, they're kind of they're pyrotypical, underworld warband ported over into the main game. They're okay, I guess. I mean, you can their main utility for the most part just seems to be that yeah, they're kind of for like a fluffy inclusion where you pick a unit and you get like extra damage against it more or less. However, having said that, they also have like some mortal wound dishing abilities in close combat, but to be perfectly honest, I really don't think you should be putting these guys in close combat too much. They're neither are going to last very long. And yes, I know the Hexbane's Hunters have a ward, but there's only like a few models in the unit, and they only have like 2 wounds with a 5-up. They're not going to last long. Another problem I also have too is how the Hexbane's hunt ability seems kind of weird. So if I'm reading it correctly, it kind of seems that yes, he has the option to pick a hero or a monster, but if there's a wizard hero, he must pick that too. I don't know. I just feel that wording is a little clunky. On top of that, I think it's a little restrictive because I think it would just be better to just let him pick anything you want on the other side to be picked. The truth be told, but these guys, in my opinion, really are. I think they're really, at the end of the day, they're probably just going to be like, reasonably durable objective holders. Because at the end of the day, that's really what a lot of these underworld warbands end up being in the grand scheme of things. I mean, heck, even GW has even acknowledged that. I think that was even their official justification why you would bring one of the 3 orc war clans, war bands. Well, just simple because they're cheaper versions they're just cheaper than bringing a min squad of their basic battle line. So probably this is what you'll end up getting these guys for, depending on I'll need to check how expensive they are, but if they end up being cheap, that's basically what these guys are going to be, just cheap objective holders. If they're not particularly cheap, I don't know how much often you'll see these guys outside of like fluffy lists. But I will admit the models look pretty cool and they're reasonable. They're reasonable in terms of attacks, but just don't expect them to last against dedicated combat. That's all I'm gonna say. Galen and Doriala Vendenst, everyone's favorite father-daughter duo in the Mortal Realms. Okay, so here we have a couple. But I just want to point out too before we continue, these two, as a bit of trivia, these two have the honor of actually being the Cities of Sigmar first ever official named characters. Yeah, they came out during the Broken Realm saga, and they were the first hero characters that were exclusive to the Cities of Sigmar. So good for them. And you know what? They're all things considered, I actually think they actually do have some decent utility. They have they have the ability to basically shoot endless spells and and basically shoot and banish endless spells. And considering that endless spells have become a lot, I feel have gotten definitely more relevant the last couple editions. Yeah, I think they do have some definite utility there. Plus they also got some pretty good damage output when you're attacking wizards or demons, and especially in the current, and as of speaking, since we're in the current GHB dedicated to wizards, that they definitely have some more utility as before. They don't have their durability is fine for what they can do. But not that I think you should put them into combat particularly. These guys are basically general snipers. Just keep them in the back line, sniping wizards, sniping demons, sniping endless spells. You'll probably be okay. Now, will they have relevancy against every opponent? No. But when you have the right matchup, these two will definitely be worth. I think will be definitely worth it. And I think out of all of the various witch hunter units that come in this book, I think they definitely have the most utility overall. They're pretty good, and I just want to point out too, I definitely love the models. Like, they really were a vision of the future in terms of the model style that Cities of Sigmar were going to go with. So yeah, looking good. So that's pretty much it for the human line of models. Sorry, that one was particularly big because technically it covers all of the human line models. As I've been saying before, the book well, let's be honest here, because the Free Guild were the main focus for the model updates. Obviously, the book was going to focus more heavily on them, and it definitely shows as they have the lion's share of spells, artifacts, command traits, etc. Overall, from what I'm definitely seeing, from all the advertisements I find with GW and the human line, the whole idea seemed to have been about the Castelli units. That would have been the Fusel Majors, the Ogre Boys, the Fusiliers, the Shield Shooters, the Fusiliers guys, like the shorter guys, the steel helms, the cannon. The whole idea seems to be on fortified castling formations. That seems to be the theme they seem to be going for. But from actually reviewing all of the models, I'm actually kind of leaning to the fact that, especially compared to some of the other units in the book, I don't think defense is really what the human line of the book is really for. I think if I really had to compare them all, I would probably say the human line in general is more focused on offense. Yes, the whole Castellite formations, they even have it's all about defense, and heck, the only unique war battalion is all about just castling them up. That's basically even the lore idea. They're supposed to be a moving castle, but I don't really feel that's really their main focus. I think when you look at all of the buffs, the command abilities, the options from the cities, adding more shooting, adding more rend, adding more hitting power, making there's multiple ways to stack on the new commands. And I just want to point out too, a lot of the commands for the humans especially, it's focused on buffering their shooting and hitting power. I really feel that the real value that the human line brings to the army is not defense necessarily. It's more being your main offensive units in general. And we're going to see what I mean when we move on into the Duerden and the Elf ports of the book. And just to point out too, that I say this in the most broadest sense because obviously all the sub-factions have pretty much all have, like, offense and defensive combos. They all have magic or prayers. I'm just saying in a generalist sense. If I'm going to, like, if I'm going to straw man each of the races, the straw man I think of the human line is the offensive guy. But overall, good. The human line, good models, good combos, plenty of choice. Definitely, you can make it an exclusively human army. It's got all that. You got all the spells, artifacts, and combos there. And one thing I will point out, the definite theme they're also seem to be going with the human line is spamming multiple commands. And by commands, I mean the special Cities of Sigmar commands. There's definitely multiple ways to get 2 to a unit, to a hero, instead of only 1. So that seems to be... Now, I don't know if the meta will go around spamming commands, but I do believe it will definitely play a part. That's my thing on them. Okay, well, enough about humans. Let's move on to Duradin. So, to start him off with, the big man himself, the Warden King. Well, the Warden King is definitely more durable than he was in the last book, and there's many ways to get him up. As we saw, like, there's ways to, like, get him to just auto heal wounds, ignore, like, make it harder to wound him, ignore a rend. Like, you can definitely soup up the Warden King, just make him just a pure buff mander. Like, honestly, out of all of them, I think the Duradin, if I'm really thinking it over, it's probably the best. The Warden King is probably the best hero in the army to really get a foot, like hero hammer model. Just give him all the defensive buffs you can, and just let him tank everything and hit back. He's got to change up to his abilities. Now he's got his new Ancestral Grudge ability. Basically means he can pick a unit, and basically all Duradin in the army, in your army, 6 is automatically wound. Like 6 is to hit, automatically wound. So if you're probably wondering, yes, it's the same ability pretty much as the Night Haunt or the Dragon Ogres. So that's pretty good too, because you're going to see in a minute too that can actually be very, very powerful, because the hitting power of the Dispossessed in general has gone up significantly. So that's definitely not nothing. Plus, in addition to this, they like so many other heroes in the general army, like armies in general, he can, after he's done attacking, he can pick another unit to immediately attack after him, and it's just Duradin unit in general. So that's some definite flexibility there. Beyond that, that's pretty much what he is when you get right down to it. You want this guy definitely in combat, because he doesn't really have any other like buffing utility beyond his his grudge ability. So yeah, just get him on the board, run him into the enemy, hopefully as quickly as you can, and just watch him tank. So the Rune Lord, mind you, he's pretty similar to who he was before. He can still unbind a spell like a wizard. He's still a priest, and his Forge Fire ability actually hasn't changed. It's the same as it was last one. He can improve the rend characteristic of a Duradin model. A unit on a 4. Excuse me. Beyond that, his hitting power, I think, has improved somewhat. But beyond that, there's really not much more to say. The Rune Lord is pretty much the same as he was before. So if you liked him then, you'll like him now. Yeah. Now, the Longbeards, however, definitely have had some changes done to them. I've seen some grumbling online already that they've been nerfed, and in some ways, yes, they have. Well, one thing, they definitely can get pretty... they can definitely get okay in terms of tankiness, because now you can give them a shield to give them like just a flat 3+ save instead of a 4-up. So yeah, basically you can get almost everything in your army to like a 3-up if you wanted. Longbeards, the biggest thing to change to them, there's been a bit of a nerfing to their... I thought Duradin were made of sterner stuff. Now all it does is basically if a Duradin model flees within 12 inches of them on a 4+, it doesn't flee. See, before they had a whole bunch of list of abilities they could do, like with buffing attacks and everything. That's gone now. Now, why do I think they did this? I think it's because, to an extent, some of those old abilities have now been moved into the Duradin generic orders, and also some of the command traits that's been moved there. I don't think it's going to be a great loss what was taken away, but I do admit it does take away a little bit of their flavor. Now, before you had like a toolbox unit, now they're strictly a bravery buffer, along with being potentially a little bit of flexibility too. Because if you go for their ancestral weapon, they can they get their ancestral weapon can get like some pretty good rend, or if you go for their shield, they can be a pretty good a pretty good anvil unit. Personally, I think if you're going for dispossessed, unless you're going all Longbeards, I think you're better off making these guys offensive, because I think overall, I think Ironbreakers can fill the role for as an anvil for the most part. I think you definitely want to lean more towards like offensive units, but I can definitely see an argument to be made to go both ways for them. In addition to that, hammerers. Okay, I'm just gonna answer one thing very quickly. Some people have pointed out too, if you look on the War Scroll, you can't actually see anything for like command units or anything. So it looks like some parts of the War Scroll is missing text, and I'm pretty sure it is. So expect an errata on this War Scroll pretty soon. Because like, if you look right here, there's no standard bearer, there's no champion, it's just empty text. And if you look right there, there's like a wall of text, there's like a big empty space there. It's clear this was a typo. So in addition to hammerers, okay, well, biggest thing with hammerers is that they lost their mortal wound ability. Yeah, I know, very sad. However, their generic weapon profile is actually much better. It's now just it's a flat 2 rend with 2 damage. So honestly, this change up is either going to be a buff or a nerf depending on your meta. So what I mean is like if you're up against like for example, if you're up against something where mortal wounds would have been better, this is a nerf. But I've definitely seen arguments where just better rend and better damage output is just flat better than it can be statistically better than mortal wounds with a worse base profile. So we'll have to see how it ultimately ends up working out in that regard. But I don't think really, if in the grand scheme of things, you're going to be using these too much for offense. Well, obviously they're good for offense, but the real big thing is they're going to be your babysitter for your Warden King. Because get this, when the Warden King is you can assign a unit of hammers to a Warden King, and basically that gives the Warden King a 4+ ward. So yeah, so you stick these guys near the Warden King, and your Warden King is like okay, so like he's already probably buffed up with some artifacts. He's buffed up with some command traits. He's probably he's harder to wound. He's healing wounds. He's got a really he's got his weapons got tons of AP and tons of damage. And get this, now on top of everything, he's got a 4+ ward as long as he sticks near these guys. And when the Warden King attacks, he can make these guys to attack immediately after him. Seeing what I'm seeing now. And also, as I've mentioned before, you can already tell just by looking right here is that pound for pound, this army is definitely more durable overall, even on average, than the Castellite units for the Free Guild. So this is what I was trying to say before. Like pound for pound, I think because there are a lot of things are cheaper in the Free Guild. You want them to be offensively minded, but these guys are definitely on average much more tankier than anything the Free Guild have. So this is why if you are going to go with mixed race with the Cities of Sigmar, I think your dispossessed should be more focused on tanking than the Free. While the Free Guild are more dedicated to hitting the enemy, especially now because remember you can't take Stormcast Eternals as coalition like you used to. So you're definitely probably going to be looking to the dispossessed more to take up the mantle of your big armored anvil units, much more than the Free Guild probably ever will. Iron Drakes, for the most part, they're honestly almost identical to they were before. I honestly really didn't see too much change with them. The leader can take the leader can take a torpedo or Drake fire pistols or get more shots. In general, they have various firing mode. They have various firing modes, but they can on average though their guns are objectively better than the free guild shooting. But again, I believe these guys are more expensive, so you can't spam them to the most extent as you would a free guild unit. You get more, like I said, you get more shots if you stay still, same as before. They have a Cinder Blast Bomb. Yeah, no, honestly, there just really isn't a ton of changes with these guys, because, to be perfectly honest, I get why. Like, they were pretty good the last book, and I'm pretty sure, and they're gonna stay pretty good this book. There's definitely ways to boost their shooting. You got your Rune Priest who can help them out. You've got, they're gonna do really good in Greywater Fastness as always. Yeah, honestly, not much else to say. Just a good, solid shooting unit, which is pretty durable. Yeah, you're definitely going to see more of these guys. Iron Breakers. Honestly, not much change to these guys either. They're just, a pretty solid hitty unit. That's also pretty attacky as well. Their offense is not the greatest in the world, but honestly, again, you're probably not really if you're bringing Iron Breakers, they exist to be your anvil unit. Like, that's what I said before when it came to Longbeards. Like, Longbeards, for the most part, like, pound for pound, Longbeards actually hit a lot harder than Iron Breakers. Yeah, that's why I think it's better to kit, like, Longbeards kit them out for offense, and Iron Breakers, they use them as your general, like, anvil unit. I'm not saying they're useless in combat, because there are definite ways to buff up their combat abilities, but I think you should, again, with a lot of things dispossessed, I think you should focus more on their durability, because like I mentioned before, you can't spam Stormcast in this army like you used to. You need to start looking at legitimate ways to get anvil units in the army, and I think Iron Breakers can help fill the gap with that. They all, like, for the most part, for the most part, they haven't really changed all that much. I think their most significant change, however, is how their Gromwell shield wall works. So now, basically, how it works is if they're picked to do the form shield wall order, that's basically one of the unique orders for the Doradin that they can get. They get a ward of a 4+ instead of a 5+. So again, this is what I've been trying to say. Iron Breakers, as good as they could potentially be in combat, what you really want to be buffing is their durability. So just imagine this, and then on top of that, maybe like on top of that with, like, let's say, like, all-out defense. This thing, yeah, with an all-out defense with a 4+ ward on them. See what I'm trying to see here? All of a sudden, you're not missing Liberators as much as you probably thought you would, right? Right? Yeah. So beyond that, they have their Cinder Blast Bomb, and they have. And okay, this also is a little bit funny too. Your leader also has the ability to take some Drake fire pistols, but he's the only one who can, and he's only 2 shots. Yeah, I almost don't even know why they did that. Like, I get it's probably because the models come with the pistols, but it just adds so little. Like, I could see people just forgetting to do it, because it's like, it's 2 shots. What exactly is that gonna do at 9 inches? Like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. I just think it's kind of strange. Overall, yeah, Iron Breakers, solid unit. Probably gonna see a lot of them for dispossessed themed forces. Yeah. Okay, so the Cogsmith. The Cogsmith, in my honest opinion, I think it definitely got a bit of a downgrade, but which also then turned into a bit of a side grade, I guess, if you think of it in a certain light. It's still got its basic profiles. It hits better if it doesn't have its gun and its big gun, sorry, and it also shoots better if it doesn't have its big fighty weapon. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It shoots better with its big gun if it doesn't have its big axe, and it hits harder with its big axe if it doesn't have its big gun. That's basically what its weapon loadout goes with. But basically, also now it mostly this thing exists is to issue. This basically is to issue commands anywhere if you're with to gyrocopters and gyro bombers. So yeah, so this is a little bit different than it definitely was before. Before it had a little bit more. It had a little bit more, if I remember correctly, it had a little bit more utility with just general war machines. Now, this thing basically just exists to buff gyrocopters and gyro bombers. Now, issuing a command anywhere on the table, it does have its utility, but it also will depend on how much people are going to end up taking gyrocopters or gyro bombers. Which, to be fair, we might see more of when we get to them. I think those two units definitely have more utility than before. So let's just talk about those right now. Okay, so the gyrocopters, well, if you look at them real close, they got a little bit more, they're pretty durable now. They have a 3+ save, 4 wounds, and the gyro bomber has got a 3+ save with 5 wounds. So they're definitely pretty durable. Their blades, their close combat attacks have definitely gotten better. Like, the old attacks were just dumb. Again, I hate random attacks. I don't care if it's justifiably fluffy. It's just dumb. So what is their claim to fame? Well, their steam gun is pretty good, but again, it's that dreaded random shooting output, which I hate. Which admittedly doesn't do a ton of damage. That's the steam gun. Their brimstone gun, on the other hand, I think is a lot better. I think it got a lot better because it's got some good range. It does some reasonable damage. Got some reasonable rend. In addition to that, you also have once per battle. You can do like a bombing run with them. So you can for each. So for 2, you can roll a 2+ for each and do like D3 mortal wounds. That can be pretty good. Overall, I think I actually like gyrocopters a lot more than I did in the previous edition. Because I didn't think they were particularly impressive, and I never really saw anyone use them. The fact that you can bring 3 of them, and they have this kind of firepower and with reasonable movement, I think we might see more of these guys. I think, yeah, it's possible. Now, the gyro bomber, on the other hand, you can only bring 1 of them, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm gonna say. Yes, I would say, yeah, the gyro bomber is objectively better than before. Its clatter gun is a lot better. You got a pretty good attack output with that. Its rotor blades give it much better close combat, and only other thing is at first it's because it only comes in a unit of 1, you might think that its bombing ability is worse than the gyrocopters, but until you remember that it can do this basically throughout the game. The gyrocopters only have bombing once a game. The gyro bomber can just keep doing that throughout the game. It's pretty durable. It's much better in close combat. Not that I think you want it there, and its shooting is actually pretty good too. It's actually got good range with good output. Of the 2, I would probably say the gyro bomber is definitely better. On the other hand, the gyrocopter can be taken in squadrons, so you can definitely get a greater amount of shooting from volume from them. Now, do I think we're going to get into a meta of these guys? No, but I think they definitely justify their existence better than they ever did before. So I do think we might actually see these guys more often. At least much more to the extent they were last edition, which was. I don't know. Did anyone ever actually see the people use these? Because I really didn't. I mean, maybe once or twice, but not really. So hopefully that changes. Because I actually think they have a lot of character, and they add a lot of character to the army. So I hope we see more of them. So the Duradin line, it's basically like I said before. The Duradin line, like I said, if I really had to put up all the different the stats and I did the math hammer, I think objectively, I think the Duradin line hits a little less harder than the Free Guild on average, but I think they're definitely point for point and pound for pound, they're definitely more durable. So as I mentioned before, remember, we for the most part, we've lost a lot of heavier access to Stormcast. Like the Stormcast Eternals really pulled their weight in the last book as basically like the tankers for the Cities of Sigmar. Now you can't bring them beyond allies, so you can't span them like you used to. So in that regard, I think we're probably going to end up seeing is the Dispossessed and the Doradin in general, stepping up to fill the gap for the tanker department. Like you're probably going to see lines of dispossess, breaking the charge, holding objectives, that sort of thing. So I think they, like as I've mentioned before, I think because this way the different sub-factions are definitely justifying their existence more than before, as again, like I said, there's definitely less overlap in overall ability than there was last edition. So let's move on to the elves. Okay, now we're into the elves in general. So, okay, the sorceress on the black dragon. Honestly, she's not really that different than she was before. Maybe I guess her dragon is a little less offensive than it was before. But his the dragon's breath attack has gotten much better, because even though not better. I was about to say, sorry. I think it's now officially been capped, so no 20 hits like it used to be before. Overall, it's still the model overall is still pretty good overall. It can now issue issue 2 commands up to 2 times in the same phase. Must target a Darkling Coven's unit, and no command point is paid for the second one. So that can be good too. That's pretty good. Her spell is actually not bad, because so basically it's only a cast of 6, so it's not too high. And you pick a unit and roll 9 dice, and for every roll that's below that unit's save characteristic, it takes a mortal wound. So basically it's a horde clearer. So something with like save of 6, they're basically just screwed. So essentially she's pretty much the same as she was before. She's a little bit fragile for a monster, but she's a wizard. She's got okay in combat abilities. She can fly. She's got some range capabilities. She's a buffer. Just a generally okay unit. Now, will you see now? Depending on how much you see her, it will ultimately depend on the certain meta, because I know definitely we're in the season we're in, wizards are kind of like the priority targets, so I could definitely see her getting focused down quickly. So be careful with like throwing her like alone, because basically if you throw this unit just into the enemy unsupported, she is going to die. This is on the lower end of the toughness scale for monsters. So make sure she has support. That's all I'm going to say. Also, in addition to that, I'll need to see her points, because I think I remember her being one of the more expensive monsters. So I'll have to check that when we get to the points. So, the Sorceress on foot and her Blackguard. So, the Sorceress overall really hasn't changed all that much. She can still sacrifice a Darkling model and get +2 to casting, so that's okay. She's got her Word of Pain, where she can cause D3 mortal wounds and also subtract 1 from hit rolls. That's pretty good. She's abysmally fragile, so make sure to keep her straight, but that's less of an issue now, which I'll explain this in a minute. Her attack output is non-existent, so again, this unit should not be in combat ever, so just keep that in mind. However, her Blackguard, have definitely got an interesting change. So basically, if the Blackguard is near the Sorceress, they give her a 4+ ward save, and she gives them a 4+ ward save. And if you look at the Blackguard, they are actually doing okay with a 4+ ward save, because their attack output isn't nothing. Now I also want, and for those who are probably going to ask, no, they even outright pointed out this does not work for a sorceress on a black dragon. So because of this, ironically, there actually might be scenarios where the sorceress on foot ends up being more durable than the one on the dragon. As funny as that sounds. So yeah, no, these two are pretty good power coupling. She'll keep them safe. They'll keep her safe. Try not to make sure she doesn't get sniped out, because once she's gone, these guys become a heck of a lot less durable. So just putting that out there. The Bleak Swords I don't think have changed at all, really. They're just an okay unit overall. And they still, 6 is the hit, still core 2 hits. They have an okay save. Their attack put out is okay. They could be they could be an okay unit to put buffs on, because I think they're relatively cheap. Getting them to run quick, spamming that 3+ inches on them to get them up to camp objectives. They could be okay for spamming, various command abilities, but beyond that, they're just honestly, they're really just a cheap battle line. There's not really much else to say about them. The Executioners, on the other hand, they've gotten a buff now. Finally, their swords now do 2 damage flat instead of 1 damage. I always thought that was kind of weird that they did 2 damage on they did 2 mortal wounds on 6s, but they only did 1 damage. That never made sense to me. And also, I think they also have Ren now. I don't think they had Ren before, which again didn't make sense to me. Beyond that, they're pretty much serve the role as, if you're going Darkling Covens, they're your hammer unit. Now, do I think they're the best hammer unit in the book? No, but they're definitely. I think they're pretty good for their points. Again, they're a good place to put the buffs on. Anything that buffs their hitting power is going to help them. Is going to make these guys pretty scary. Beyond that, they don't really do much else. You know, they're not any faster or more durable than anything else. So honestly, they're just a sturdy unit with a good attack output. Same as always. And another thing I did notice in this book in general, definitely for Cities of Sigmar, for the most part, they're definitely not, almost universally, they're not as fragile as I was expecting. Like, even the Free Guild, like, there's very few units that have bad armor saves, or, you know, pretty much everything in the book has good armor saves, some access to ward. Like, this entire book, even though it definitely is leaning towards, like, hordes, they're not fragile hordes. Like, almost everything in the book is definitely sturdy in general. So and again, I think I know why they did this. Again, because remember, the last book was leaning heavily on Coalition, specifically Stormcast, to be the shield wall and the heavy hitters. Now everything in this book has to make up for the fact you can't bring in, you know, your Stormcast, you can't bring in your Caradron, you can't bring in your Lumineth. Like, everything in here has to stand on its own. So just something to think about. Dark Shards exist. Yeah, there's really not much else to talk about them. They're not because I think they're bad. It's just because I don't think they've changed at all. They have their repeater crossbows. They have 2 attacks base. They add 1 to hit rolls if there's at least the unit has 10 or more models. Honestly, I don't have the book in front of me, but I think they literally just copied and pasted the War Scroll from the last book. Yeah, there's like literally nothing really worth adding to it. Everyone knows what these do. They're an additional shooting option in the book, nothing more. The Dread Spears, yeah, they're basically just weaker Blackguard. That's all they really are. They add +1 to hit if they made a charge move in the same turn. Again, I think they're just another battle line choice. Nothing really much to write home about. And again, I don't actually think they even changed from the last book. Yeah, honestly, I think these 2 units, they literally just cut and pasted the War Scrolls into here with updated War Scrolls. Not to say that I think they're bad. It's just there's not really much to say because we've had whole editions of these guys basically doing what they've always done. There's not just whatever buffs in the new book will buff these guys to okay. The Dread Spears, honestly, the Dread Spears are okay. Like, they're cheap enough, but I really feel people will probably just bring Blackguard for the most part. But I could definitely see Dread Spears as cheap objective holders if you're going all Darkling Covens in that regard. And again, Dark Shards, they're you know, they're going to be just cheap ranged, you know, in an army with lots of cheap range. So we'll see what happens with them. Okay, so the Dreadlord, for the most part, he's a little now. I think, in my opinion, he's gotten a little bit more softer than he was before. But I think he's still pretty good. Now, basically, his shield has changed now. 6s now, 6s now automatically succeed for his save rolls regardless of the rend if he has a shield, which is okay. But I think this definitely gives you an excuse to want to maybe not bring the shield, because the last edition the shield was almost like an auto include for him. But now I think there's definitely an argument to be made about bringing more of his weapons options. His lance, you know, does more damage on the charge as always. His noxious breath has a cap of 10 now. And one of the big things for him now is he can reroll charges for both himself and friendly Order Serpentis units, so that's real good. Basically, yeah, if you want an offensive Black Dragon unit, this guy's the one to do it. So make sure to include him with some Saurus Knights, and you should be all right. yeah, so not really much else to say. Just a reasonably solid hero monster. Nothing really else to see here. The War Hydra. Yep. I actually really like the War Hydra. I think he's got some good changes to him. His attacks output. Again, it's changed now. Now the attacks is now equal to the number of models in the target unit, which now caps at 10. I think before it was just a flat 6. So it can be better. I think but it does have a better to hit into wound now. So I think overall it's going to end up being objectively better, even if under certain scenarios it might be worse. But I don't think I wouldn't worry about that. Its attack output is definitely better too, with flat 3 damage for its fangs. And get this is the real big thing. It now automatically heals 5 wounds at the start of the combat phase, at the end of the combat phase. Before, I think it was only like D3. I think it only held before it was what, like D3 or 3 wounds during the hero phase. So yeah, it's a lot more durable than it was before. Thing I did not particularly like, though, I'm just gonna say it right now. It doesn't seem like you can use these guys as battle line anymore. So sad face there. So that one guy who brought an all War Hydra army, yeah, I don't think you can do that anymore, unfortunately. Still a good unit though. Definitely a contender for for spells and buffs to make him better. But yeah, okay overall. So as for the chariot options, okay, well, so the Drakespawn chariot option, I think is pretty good. Oh, actually, I think it's very good. But here's the problem: it's only really going to be good on the charge. So basically, how it works is that when this thing charges in, once it charges into an enemy, you roll 2 dice for each model, and then essentially on a 2 to 4, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. For each 5+, that enemy unit suffers 3 mortal wounds. So, and also if the enemy unit picked is within 3 of any friendly Drakespawn, and then get this. And there's this. Sorry, I didn't read this at the end here. If the enemy unit picked is within 3 inches of any friendly Drakespawn Knights units, add 2 to each roll. So, okay, this is really big here. So basically, if you charge this thing into combat, and there's already some Drakespawn Knights in there as well, basically you roll a dice, add 2 to the roll, and on a 5+, each one of these things could be doing 3 more wounds, and you roll 2 dice for each. So these things come in units of 3, so that's potential 6. That's a potential 6 dice you roll, which is okay. Sorry, I can't do math in my head, but this unit potentially can do an insane amount of mortal wounds on the charge, which may actually go into explain. And on addition to that, its attack profile isn't bad, all things considered. You know, you got like 6 attacks with ferocious jaws each. It can come with a repeater crossbow. Yeah, no, this is a solid unit. Just remember though, you need to partner this thing with Drakespawn Knights, because the Drakespawn Knights add so much to its mortal wound output. It's insane. Honestly, yeah, like I could definitely see almost people making these like that alone. I can see people like trying to make scenarios where this is like the crux of your army, because that is a really good ability. As for the Drakespawn Knights, they got objectively better. Their Barbed Lance got more attacks. But beyond that, they're pretty much identical. There's not really any real change from the last book there. Because honestly, I thought they were pretty solid to begin with. All they basically did was they got a slightly better attack output. But anyway, like I said, even if you don't want to spam them, if you're bringing Drakespawn Chariots, bring Drakespawn Knights. If you're not bring one. If you're bringing one, bring the other, because they obviously are intended to work together. So I see what you did there, GW. Also, and there's another thing to consider too. Remember there's a new elf order where it allows you to retreat at the end of combat. This guy, I think, is pretty much what that was designed for. So charge this guy in, make sure they survive combat, and then use that order to retreat them out of combat, and then hope you go again, and then charge back in and do even more mortal wounds. I think if I'm understanding the rules interaction right, that's probably going to be that's a potential new cheese combo right there. So just keep in mind, if that is true and this ends up being broken, I hope they don't errata it. That's all I'm going to say. So the Shadow Blade units. These I think got a legitimate update for the new book. See, before nobody used Dark Riders ever because they were just worse skirmishers than everything else in the book. Now with the recent call of the recent call of like the Free Guild's Pistoliers. Now these guys I think now have a new niche. These guys are your light skirmish cavalry. They have reasonably good missile output with their 3-attack repeater crossbows at 18. They're now at a 4+ save. I think they were at a 5+ save before. And they're actually not bad in combat. But the real reason you want these guys is, get this, if they're within 12 of an enemy on a 5+, if an enemy unit issues a command on a 5+, they can basically make that command not go through. And the command point is still spent. So basically, if you get these guys near units, your opponent now has to be careful when issuing commands, because this guy could maybe just shut down command abilities. And I've seen from experience that can be a pretty good thing, because there's nothing worse to an enemy who relies on their command abilities if you can just shut them down. It can also retreat and still shoot and charge as before, but honestly, I don't think these guys should be in combat. I think these guys should just stick to being ranged skirmishers, especially now that we lost. Especially now that the Free Guild lost their Pistolier units. Those used to be the cheap skirmish shooters. I think these guys now have to fill that role. The Assassin is pretty much the same as he was before. He gained the strike first effect when he makes a charge, so that's good. Biggest thing I don't like about the Assassin now is he can only hide. Let's see, it's not visible. Here's another problem with him: is he used to be able to hide in a unit, and I think you could pop him out at certain times. Now he's just not visible if he's within 3 inches of a Cities of Sigmar elf unit. So yeah, I think he definitely lost some utility in that regard. I still think he has some potential though, because again, he's definitely he's definitely good for taking out enemy, definitely taking out enemy heroes. He can definitely do that. But I think there's not really, he doesn't really have any abilities that specifically target heroes anymore. He's just, I think he's now just a generally an okay combat unit. Don't get me wrong, I still think he does have potential. But the problem was, I don't think they changed him up enough than he was in the original book, and we never really saw him in the original book either. So I just don't know if he has anything now that'll change people's minds. I mean, what has he got? Unmodified rune roll for an attack made with poison. Sex does D3 mortal runes. That's same as before. Yeah. Yeah, this is the problem. I don't think he's bad. The problem is we never saw him in the original book, and he just he's not really any different than he was before. So, we'll see with him. Honestly, I think we'll see Dark Riders more than Assassins, to be perfectly honest. So now we're moving on to the Scourge Privateers. So okay, so the Dark Elf Fleet Master, in my opinion, I think he's different, even though he's functionally the same as he was before. He basically exists to buff up the Black Ark Corsairs in all things. He does have a new ability where basically if you attack him, if you roll a 1, he basically does 2 mortal wounds to you. Wait, am I reading that right? If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets this unit is 1, the attacking unit suffers 2 mortal wounds after all. Wait. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets this unit is 1, the attacking unit suffers 2 mortal wounds after all of the attacks have been made. Okay, so it looks like every single 1 to hit causes 2 more wounds. So that's actually not bad, especially considering that there's definite ways you can buff his durability as well. Especially with certain elven artifacts. But however, I don't get your hopes up in the most part. This guy probably won't survive prolonged combat for very long, especially with a dedicated melee unit. But again, I think that's this could, in theory, though, make him a pretty good suicide unit. Like, for example, okay, you know he's going to die, but you got to do some damage to a unit. Just sacrifice him, throw him into that unit, let him get killed. But then hypothetically he could do like 10 mortal wounds to the enemy because there's no there's no limit to the amount of mortal wounds he can take, unless I'm reading this wrong and he only can ever just do 2 mortal wounds to the unit. I hope I'm reading it right, because if so, that would make him a very good suicide unit. But if he only ever does just 2, he's just okay in that regard. But I think what you'll probably get more utility from him is from his other ability. So basically, when he issues the all-out attack command to a Scourge Privateer unit, you also add 1 to their attacks characteristic, as well as adding +1 to their hit. So, you know, it's that one of that new thing where it's like, that's a new trend I'm seeing in a lot of books, where like when a unit issues all-out attack, but or all-out defense, but it gives an additional ability in addition to that. So I think that's kind of cool. Basically, he already did that before, but now he also gives a +1 attack and +1 to hit. So I think that's a pretty solid buffer right there. As for what he's buffing, he's probably gonna be mostly buffing Black Ark Corsairs to an extent. The Black Ark Corsairs, they got rid of that stupid, that one stupid hook attack they had that was kind of dumb. I think it only hit on 4s and wounded on 5s. That was just stupid. They do have the option, you can kit them out either for melee or for ranged. Personally, after seeing the 2, I think honestly you're probably better off kitting them out for ranged. I don't think these guys are really the best at combat one way or another. They also have that ability that their leader has. So if an unmodified hit roll for an attack with a melee weapon targets this unit as a 1, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound after all the attacks are resolved. So that's okay, but again, that's okay. But again, that you're still banking on your opponent rolling 1s, and at the end of the day, I don't think these guys are good. Even if dedicated for fighting, these guys are not that great at fighting one way or another. I think you're better off just kitting them out for shooting, and then because remember, if your Black Ark Fleet Master gives all-out attack on them, they get +1 attack anyway. So that means that means they'll probably they'll be better in combat and have ranged ability. And if I'm actually reading it correctly too, he can that +1 attack is for both shooting and melee. So again, I'm honestly, when I'm looking at Black Ark Corsairs, I'm just kind of finding ways not, like, I'm trying to find a reason not to just give them the repeater hand bows. You know, like, I think that's just the obvious take, but I don't know. Maybe there's something here I'm not seeing. But overall, 2 solid units. Yeah, like I think there's definitely an argument to be made to go with Scourge Privateers. They definitely have some flexibility. So the Scourge Runner Chariots, they are okay, I guess. I think their Ravager Harpoon got a little bit worse. I think they used to do D6 against monsters. Now they just do flat 3, which can be better under certain circumstances. But beyond that, I don't know. They're kind of just, well, I mean, they're fast, I guess, but yeah, you definitely need to bring more than 1 if you want to get any kind of like offensive output from Scourge Runner Chariots, because they're not really, like, they're not that great in combat, and their shooting is probably best in volume. So yeah, I mean, I guess they're the main reason the main reason to bring these guys. If you're going for a mainly Scourge Privateer army, these guys are basically going to be your ranged, your ranged, not ranged, no, these are your objective grabbers, because they'll be the fastest thing in the Scourge Privateer line, so they'll run up, shoot things off objectives, camp them while your rest of your army tanks. Now, the Caribus, whatever. This guy is pretty similar to who he was before. Much like the Hydra, I think he's overall better. His attack profile is overall better. Still has that annoying D6 attack with its spike tail. I don't know why they did that. I think it should, honestly, I feel like the spike tail should have just been flat 6, but whatever. But their fang tentacles got better in attack output, so that's good. Also, one thing I just realized, they lost their healing ability. They used to be, I think every time they killed a model, they healed. But now that's gone. And I think they did that to make it so there wasn't as much overlap with the Hydra. Now there's a reason to bring both, because now what their main rule is they made it so Enemy units can't receive the Rally and Inspiring Presence command when they're within 12 inches of this unit. And to be fair, that's a really big thing because a lot of armies, this army even included, are really spamming Rally like never before. So any way to shut down Rally, I think is a big thing. So this thing, it hits a lot harder and it does and it provides utility. So those are two big pluses in my book. So that's a good monster. Which again, I think it which just makes it a shame. I think it lost its battle line ability, so that's a real shame. But overall, I think the unit is overall better. Okay, so finally we're at the pitch battle profile. So yeah, no, honestly, just by looking at this thing right here, this army really is honestly pretty good in terms of pricing. Like this army is super cheap. Like I don't think I've seen anything that goes over 350. Like yeah, like it's got, like as before, there's a ton of battle line options, you know, with your Blade Swords, your Dread Spears, your Free Guild Steel Helms. One thing I did notice, however, is, as I mentioned before, there's no way cities don't unlock battle line anymore. Like that's just something you just take for their abilities. Like optional battle line is now operated by either your general or other units on the table. So, you know, for example, okay, if I want to bring this battle line, my general needs to be Scourge Privateers. Or another thing I'm seeing is like battle line is brought by bringing other units. So, for example, Dark Shards, they're activated as battle line for each Bleak Sword or Dread Spear unit included in your army. You know, so again, it's similar to what we're seeing with others. If you want to bring this as a battle line, you need to bring another unit, which is kind of like, which is again encouraging like certain list builds if you're going for certain battle line options. Again, too, most things in this army very, very cheap. Like there's like there's nothing, I don't see anything I see as particularly overpriced. You know, like Steel Hounds for 100 for 10, I think that's reasonable. Iron Breakers for 130 for 10, I think more than reasonable. So many different options in this book. It's honestly pretty good. Yeah, no, pretty good. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just reading to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, no, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, so yeah, I'm also now I'm just looking at yeah, no, it doesn't look like there's yeah, I was just looking maybe see if I missed something in regards to the monsters. Yeah, it looks like War Hydra lost its battle line option, which is a shame. The Carrier just did too, that's unfortunate because that means that I guess this army lost its all monster build. But I don't know. I guess they're kind of just. I guess that was a little bit as far as Cities of Sigmar. I guess as I think about it, I guess that's a little out of character because just an army of nothing but monsters. I guess I kind of had a little bit of a hard time justifying that in my head. But I don't know. You can still bring all steam tanks as battle lines. That's still there, so that's something to consider. Yeah, Bleak Swords, Dread Spears. That's all still there. Drakespawn Knights. Yeah, and Universal Repentance General. Yeah, the Fusiliers. Now Fusiliers, you need to bring Steel Helms. That's another thing I've noticed. A lot of the new stuff requires Steel Helms to be brought. And also, this is a weird thing too. The Flagellants, I assumed, now that was the one I assumed that when bringing as battle line, I thought like Vindicarum would unlock them as battle line, but no. Apparently, you have to bring the new hero model, the Petrifax Zenithor. Yep. Anyway, you have to bring her to unlock Flagellants as battle line. So. That's a little different. I mean, it's not bad because she buffs them like absolute crazy, but I just wasn't expecting that. And if you look at the bottom too, so essentially pretty much everything in order, barring the Seraphon, and you can bring them as battle line, which I think is a little bit weird. Sorry, not battle line. You bring them as allies, which by the way I think is a little bit weird because one thing I've noticed in the lore is that Seraphon have become a lot more active in the cities. You know, there's skinks. You know. Intermingling with locals in the lore. They have like embassies in almost all the free cities. So I'm a little bit surprised that you still can't ally with them. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. There are ways to justify that. Honestly, I feel like that was just an oversight. I think Seraphon should have been included as allies, in my honest opinion. But otherwise, yeah, pretty much everything else in order can ally with Cities of Sigmar. So that's still pretty good for all it is. Boy, this was a long one. So overall, my flavor of the book, I think overall the book is a lot better, mechanics wise than the last book. Again, I think the biggest loss to this book was the loss of Coalition. I think, even though I understand why they did it, I think it's really sad to lose Coalition because, again, it's going to upset a lot of people because a lot of people's armies just all of a sudden became non-usable. I thought it was made for really fluffy lists, but I do understand that they want Cities of Sigmar to be able to stand on their own more and have their own unique identity, independent of the other factions. So I guess there's that, but I do believe though it was a mistake not keeping Stormcast as Coalition, because again, Stormcast are mentioned so much in the lore to be highly related to the Cities of Sigmar that I think it was a mistake not including them. And honestly, that was nothing to do with mechanics, that had nothing to do with lore. That's simply because they wanted to encourage people to buy the new free guild models and to buy more of the models in the book. That it was simply monetarily based. That aside, I think the book has a lot more character. It has a lot more combos. There's a lot. I feel like the book finally gives justification to take pretty much everything in the book. Like all the sub factions in the army have a reason to exist. And again, I understand a lot of people are going to be upset because there's not a lot of overlap between the various sub factions. Again, it's similar to Auric War Clans. There's not a lot that you can bring them all together. There's just a lot of overlap. But I think the overlap that does exist and the sheer fact of what they bring individually, I think will more than make up for it. So yes, I do believe competitively, mixed race armies will still be probably the most competitive option. Just cherry pick the best thing for the need and just bring it. Now, but do I think you can bring like all free guild or all dispossessed or all scourge privateers? Yes, because again, like I mentioned before, because they mostly only really interact with their own sub faction. What they do in that said sub faction is a lot better. So dispossessed, now the dispossessed, all their combos, they are more than capable of standing on their own. The free guild, definitely capable of standing on their own. Heck, even like things like the Scourge Privateers and the Order Serpentis, now because with their general buffs, you could even make armies of just of them, and they could definitely all stand on their own. Like before, before some of the smaller factions of the Scourge Privateers, they clearly weren't intended to be used independently. Now, I feel like you legitimately can. Will it be the most competitive thing? Obviously not. But what I'm saying is you're not just going to get rolled over just by going, let's say, like all dispossessed or all free guild or all Scourge Privateers. But having said that, again, it's the best thing about the book is having all these options and all these different races working together. That's still going to be the main, probably the most competitive options for the book, along with probably shooting. Yeah, like, come on, let's just get this out of the way. This book is still probably we're probably inevitably going to move back into the shooting meta with this book. So enjoy that. So overall, thumbs up on this book. Good job, GW. You gave Cities of Sigmar a unique identity that they truly have on their own. So yeah, honestly, so if you're thinking of getting this book, I recommend it. It's got a lot of flavor, a lot of ways to customize, and if you really want to, and the fact that they still do stuff for allies means you still can have a fluffy Tempest Eye list with Caradron Overlords. You just can't bring as much of them. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video, longer than usual, and hope you have a great day. Bye.